it's going to be great, and his perspective is it's not like black or white. There's a lot of different things that he takes into consideration. I just watched a recent interview of him a couple weeks ago, and then I also re-listened to one that he had with Nicole Sackage, where they were talking about Skinwalker Ranch and that
Oh
phenomenon, and
yeah.
the Bledsoe family and their phenomena, and other things too. But like, there's a whole range. There's like a lot that could be talked about. This is going to be an epic episode. By the way, YouTube, in
Oh,
case you're
definitely.
listening, this is YouTube. We know that we know that you're listening to our backstage conversation. We're not live yet. We will be live in 60 seconds. But the radio hasn't started yet. The show isn't actually officially started yet. So just enjoy the start of our conversation, everybody. We'll start in like
Yeah.
less than 1 minute. 1 minute.
I tell you though, Grant, when I had him on a different show, we interviewed him and he's the one that got me to write things down. He's like, "Do you have it written down? Do you have it written?" I'm like, "Well, no, not exactly, not all." And so he like was the one that really pushed me to do that. And I tell you, things just like start coming together and I'm like, "Oh, is this like you hear me asking about new things
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that's from writing it down." So
Well,
he's great
that's
advice.
that's awesome. I haven't done anything like that. We'll have to find out more details about that as soon as we start. We're gonna go live right now. So chat, YouTube,
Perfect.
what's up, YouTube? We're getting started right now on the back end. So all right, Coley, let's go.
Let's do it.
Keith and Corey, they're ready to go. Talking about aliens, UFOs, and the unknown. The talk show is buzzing, the excitement grows. Exploring the mysteries that the universe holds. Get ready to dive into the world of the paranormal. Welcome to the Coley and Marty Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild, wild ride for sure. Fearless and bold, not afraid to ask questions that challenge all we think we grasp. Every episode brings a new task to uncover the truth beneath the mask. Believe in the unbelievable. Open your mind. Welcome to the Coley and Marty Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild, wild ride for sure. Welcome to the Coley and Marky Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild, wild ride for sure. Welcome to the Coley and Marky Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild, wild ride for sure.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Coley and Marquis Show. Coley, we are
Hello.
live. What's up, Coley? How you doing? How's it been?
I'm doing great. I have to apologize for not having webcam on, but my neighbors are having a party and the music was super loud, so I just, I figured this is better than nothing. So I do apologize for that.
Well, it's okay. One of us is on camera at all times, and they just want to hear your voice, Coley. They just want to hear you, okay? They just want to know
Oh,
you're here. So, all right.
I'm
So,
here.
yes, Scott, good vibes, my friend. What's up, chat? I want to say hello to everybody in the chat here. Just give me a second. There's some lurkers, so we'll wait for people to catch up to this. We have with us tonight, everybody, a special guest. But first, let me say what's up to my Helix Rock Radio listeners. That's right, you on the Rock Radio side. What's up, everybody? If you're listening on
Hello.
yeah, what's up? What's up? So if you're
Love you guys.
we
Yeah.
love you guys. And if you don't know, Helix Rock Radio can be downloaded by both Apple and Samsung. Or, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Samsung. I'm just revealing my cards right now. Apple or Android. That includes Samsung, Motorola, any Android phone you have. It's Helix Rock Radio on the app side. And then on the internet, you can actually search the web at rockradio.live. And you can find us and other really interesting shows as well, as long as some really cool music on the back end there. So there's that. And then, of course, we are streaming live on the video side for now on Helix. I'm sorry, Helix. On YouTube at Dimensions of Reality Podcast. We will be, by the way, next week making a lot of changes. The first change we're going to make next week is we're going to be using StreamYard because it's got some features that I think would be great for adding guests on, but also really good features for presenting some things that I really wanted to share with you guys. Images, videos, things like that, simple stuff. But also some a great way to bring on people from the audience. Right now I'm using Zoom. It's not as smooth as StreamYard is when it comes to bringing on guests and many other features. So we're going to be making that switch for you guys next week. It's going to be awesome. Don't worry. You'll love it. And then, of course, we will be streaming finally on the Coley and Marquise Talk Show's Facebook page. That is the Coley and Marquise Talk Show on Facebook. So that's going to be awesome. It's a change. We finally hit that mark, that milestone. We've had the page for long enough.
So
We've
awesome.
built up the audience. Yes, Coley, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the team. The team has been just
Absolutely. Wonderful.
awesome. I can't-
Wonderful. Yeah.
Guys,
We have the
listen.
best team ever.
I can't even believe, honestly, I just cannot believe that we have people that want to support us, and not just any people. Like, these are people that have been with us. I've been watching them, a lot of these guys and gals, specifically like Paulie, for example, and I mean, and Tim,
yeah.
of course, and other, like, I've been watching you guys on other shows and helping out other people. To have you on our team, we appreciate it. We love you guys too, and seriously, we could not do all of this alone. So your support means so much to us. So there's that. And then
Absolutely.
we're also going to be on, what was that other you suggested? We're going to be on another platform streaming as well. Rumble. I got a lot of platforms in my mind. So
Yes.
With that
We're
being-
definitely going to be going out and branching out, so
We
it'll be
are.
great.
Yeah, we're definitely branching out. So, and with that, everyone, let's say what's up to the audience. So we've got in the chat, and this does not include the lurkers, we have with us Silent Shuriken. By the way, that is a ninja name right there. Love it. What's up, or what up, Silent Shuriken? We got Good Vibes Only. What's up, Good Vibes Only? I dig that because it's always good vibes here. Scott Rosen, of course, our team member, and of course, one of the wrenches. Thank you, Scott. Keeping everything positive in the chat. We appreciate you. We love you. Ninja Bro 3000. What's up, my boy? I know who you are. You know who you are. What's up, Ninja Boy? Midwest Night Watchers. This could be one of two people, but just because.
Oh, I'll
just in
be on
case-
their show pretty soon. Yeah.
Really?
They're awesome. Yeah.
If you're listening in, Coley, tell them when you're going to be on the Midwest Night Watchers show. When is that going to be?
You know what? I'll have to check the date. I'll have to check. I know it's
Okay,
in August.
We'll find out. But
coming
either
up.
way, in August, it's very soon. We're in the month of August, so it's going to be very soon. So Midwest Night Watchers, hello to both of you, and I love you guys. You guys have been, again, you're another OG supporter. Bryson, of course, Bryson Folly. What's up, my guy? Bryson coming in from Twitch, of course, in like my old school days when I first started this whole thing. And we have with us Timoth Man, another wrench, and the one I was mentioning earlier about somebody I've been watching help out other creators. This guy, thank you, man. We love you. You're awesome too. So thank you for. Plus, that beer game is strong. My goodness, Timoth Man's beer game is strong.
I love it. He's everywhere. So
He
it's awesome to have everybody's support. We appreciate it greatly.
Polly will be here if she can. Guys, give a special. Please send love to Polly. She's going through a lot right now. not gonna say what, but either way, just send love, send positivity to Polly. We love you, Polly. We care about you, and we're always thinking about you all the time. So there's that. But also, let's talk about our guest. I don't even know what we're doing the introduction, but for the sake of formality, let's do the introduction. So we have with us tonight Grant Cameron. So everybody knows the esteemed Grant Cameron, a leading researcher and author in the field of ufology. Grant has dedicated his career to exploring the connection between consciousness and the UFO phenomena, which we're going to be talking about that and so much more tonight, as well as orbs, because I'm so curious about this. Now there's all this talk about orbs in the media because of Alessandro's book being leaked. We're going to talk about some orbs today, too, providing a groundbreaking insight that has captivated and inspired many audiences all over the world. He's a Canadian, of course, or I'm not sure if he's still in Canada. We'll talk about that. But he's Canadian, and he's been very instrumental to getting a lot of things working on the Canadian side in terms of their efforts to push for disclosure and so forth. So we're going to bring Grant Cameron on, and we're going to have such an awesome time. So, Grant, I'm going to bring you here and pull you from the waiting room, sir. Give me 1 second. Participant. This is why StreamYard would be so much better. All right, Grant, we're bringing you in,
it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be so good. I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about it. So I added Grant. Grant should be joining us very soon. So hopefully I didn't butcher that intro. I'm always afraid to butcher the intro. Grant, let me know when you can hear us, Grant.
I can hear you.
We can see you. We can hear you, my friend. Welcome.
Beautiful.
Welcome. So good to see you, man.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, no, it's always great to have Grant on. It's always insightful. I always look forward to hearing his wisdom because he has a lot of it. So it's awesome. Thank you, Grant, for coming on.
I hope I don't let you down.
You couldn't
never.
You just sit and talk about something. Grant could literally sit here and just talk and ramble about anything, and it would be profound. We'd all be here like, wow. Grant, I've been following you, man. I've been following you for a long time. I talked about it before the show. I have changed my perspective on you dramatically over the years. Just your breadth in depth and understanding of the field, of the history, your involvement, your deep involvement in the real activity in the ufology. It goes without saying, man. You are a monumental figure in the field. You're very influential. You're very important to the field, and this is one of those moments that I believe is like a milestone in my time talking on the interweb. So I'm going to do it again. Thank you so much for being here. But let's start off talking about you, and let's talk about what you're working on right now. What are you working on right now, Grant?
Everything that has led me 50 years, it'll be 50 years next May. Everything now is headed towards indications that I'm getting from whatever this phenomena is, the intelligence, the idea of looking at the nature of reality, that what this phenomena is doing, it's leading us towards a greater understanding of how things actually work. So what the paranormal is if you look at the world around you, when you have a paranormal event, it's to do one thing and one thing only. To me, I call it the theory of wow. It's to get you to go, hey, that's not supposed to happen. Like, why is that happening? It's to lead you to awe and curiosity. It's to make you wonder what the heck is going on. Because if this paranormal phenomena weren't happening, the world would be nuts and bolts. But because this paranormal phenomena is happening, it's simply telling you something is wrong in what you believe. And if you go back and look through history, you'll see we are always wrong about everything. We thought the world was flat. We thought we were at the center of the universe. We thought that the sun went around the earth. We thought things were solid. We thought there was only one galaxy. And it just goes on. And as we go along, we get better understanding. And where I'm at now is looking at this idea, is there even time and space? Is there this whole reincarnation idea that's now come up about the fact that if there's no time and space, like Donald Hoffman, who's a major scientist, is basically making this idea that everything is like a desktop icon, that everything you see is not real. It's not reality. If you're playing a video game where you're driving a car, you're not actually driving a car. This is just a simulation. It's all like a computer simulation, and you're never ever going to see reality. Reality is not seeable. So what the phenomena is doing these weird things that get you to question what's going on. And lots of times I thought I had it. You may know I did 27 high dose sessions with psilocybin. And what I wanted to do, I'd written a book called Contact Modalities, and that's the idea that there's in the field, everything is there. All the answers are there. And it's the ability to shut down your left rational analytical brain, which people like psychics and channelers and people can do, and get in the field, get the material and bring it back. And so when I was working on this whole thing, I decided I couldn't get in the field through meditation. I couldn't do it through hypnosis. I tried to be hypnotized. But I knew that in psychedelics, you could get in the field. That if you do the 5 gram thing, it's going to be very rough. It's like going on a roller coaster. I hate roller coasters, and it's going to be like the highest roller coaster you've ever been on. But I knew I had to get in the field. I had to see what it was. And one of the things that was given to me, well, there's a number of things given to me. The way it started was I went in and I called it the psilocybin school. So I wasn't there to get high, to enjoy myself, to do whatever. I just wanted to get in the field. I wanted to break through. I knew this was going to be very traumatic or whatever. And basically, I just showed up and said, okay, I'm here. I'm here for school. What do I need to know? And they went through the first 6 for sure. It was like lesson 1. And within a couple of minutes, I knew what the lesson was. They were telling me a lesson. And lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4. So I'd go through these different sessions. And it got to a point where in these sessions, they started going after ego. And I think this is one of the big problems we have is you have the ego that blocks you from the answers. We believe we are the center of the universe. We've got it all figured out. And that blocks it. If you can realize that it's all one thing, love is the core to the universe, and you can get in that field, you realize everything's alive, conscious, and everything's connected. So I was there, and then they started hammering me about this consciousness thing, or about this ego thing. They said, basically, you think you know everything. You think you got it all figured out. Let me tell you what, you haven't got a clue what's going on. And then the next session I'd go in, the same story. This, and I don't know what it was. It was like a higher self, spirit guide, whatever. There was this voice that was sort of like telepathically talking to me, said the same thing. And they said, you think you got it all figured out. You haven't got a clue what's going on. And it was this idea that this is where I am now, is this idea that you think you know what's going on. And the more you look at this phenomena, the weirder it gets, the more complex it gets. And I keep saying this is going to be, I almost maintain that this is going to be, when you get down to this thing, it's going to be an ontological, spiritual kick in the groin for a lot of people. They're just not going to believe how badly mistaken they were as to what was going on. It's going to be spiritual in nature. It's going to be 1,000 times more complex than people think it is. It's not going to have a hint of capitalism. And so when I'm in the field and they would tell me this, and then at one point I actually got frustrated and I said, you keep hammering me on this ego thing. And I said, I'm just here to learn something, and so you tell me what the heck's going on. And then this voice says, we don't know either. And I go, come on. We don't know either. And I got the idea that it was whatever the voice was, it was sort of like, we know our level down, but we don't know what the levels above us. And that's what I come to. And so I give some examples of this thing. The one I thought was very significant is the idea that because I do all the phenomena. The book that's coming up is called the Big Game. I was going to call it the Super Bowl, but it's going to be called the Big Game, books 1 and 2. So what it is that you realize that all the paranormal phenomena happen across all paranormal phenomena. For example, apportations. Apportations happen in physical mediumship. They happen in ghost phenomena. They happen. UFO experiencers have apportations. It happens in Ouija boards. It happens, and you realize this is it's all connected. It's all basically the same sort of thing. And so I came across an expression it was supposed to be a seance done with the famous theologian Martin Luther. And what we ask in the UFO community is, when's the government going to tell us what's going on? What's going on? We need the answer. It's like we got this puzzle. We want the final piece of the puzzle put in, and we get really frustrated or whatever. And why don't the aliens land on the White House lawn and tell us what's going on? And so they asked Martin Luther the question, but the question wasn't, why don't the aliens land? It was basically, the question was, why doesn't God get off his fat rear end and come down here and tell us what's going on? Why the mystery? Why does he stay separate? And what Martin Luther said, now whether this came through a seance or whatever, but it was brilliant. Martin Luther said, and I'll just paraphrase what he said. He said, because doubt is part of the equation. If your soul were to know the answer to everything, it would grow wings and fly away and leave the body behind. The God is the harvester, and we are the sowers, and the God is determined to keep the plow in the ground. And this whole idea is, and that's the idea is extended to, why do UFOs do weird things? And it's to create awe and curiosity. Because unless you got awe and curiosity, you're not going to do any research. If you got it all figured out, you're not going to spend money to research anything. And so you have these examples, like when I got started, the first night I saw the UFO, it flew right in front of the car, close enough to basically say, you don't have to question, is this stars, planets, you know, a misinterpretation of whatever. It was that close. It was like, there was no doubt. It was like, there it is. It's like, because this thing was being seen by a lot of people. And I'm like, that's it. Holy cow. I just floored. The second night I went, the thing was jumping around the sky. And we called it, some kids that I interviewed, young kids, they called it the bouncing ping pong ball. And I said, oh yeah, I saw that. And it was like just weird. It was just boop, 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 just bouncing around in the sky. And as it came closer to us, it turned into this red object that we'd seen the first night. And so the question is, why does a UFO, if you assume this is extraterrestrial, which I no longer really believe, if it's extraterrestrial and it comes 1,000 light years and it comes to what? Bounce around in the sky? Like, what the heck's that all about? Or the thing that got me going, we were going to go out there and I had no interest in UFOs. So we waited for 3 months before I finally went out to see in this small town what people were looking at. There was a film that was caught where a local film crew caught this thing jumping from the ground to 5,000 feet in the air in 3 frames of film. So in 1/8 of a second, it jumps from the ground to 5,000 feet in the air. So why does a UFO come all the way across the galaxy to do something like that? Like, what is that about? Why do they have to do that? Or if you take a look at Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, if you listen to his story, the first time he saw a UFO after he bought the ranch, it was 2016 October, I think it was, him and 12 other people, and he's describing how this thing was sitting there, and it was there, and they're all looking at this thing in play day and light, and they're looking at it, and all of a sudden it does what we call a jump. It just goes, and it's in another part of the sky. You know, it doesn't fly there. It just is one place, and suddenly it's another part of the sky. So what is that about? What is the phenomena doing? And then he says it's sitting there, and he's going, oh my, if you hear him tell the story, he's going, oh my, I couldn't believe it. It's like, did you see that thing move? Why did you jump? It moved to a different part of the sky. And then it moves, and you hear this over and over again. It takes off, like the one person described in 1973 that told me the story about the fact that it went to 150 feet in the air, and it was sort of making this noise, and then it went like lightning going the opposite way. It goes, boom. So it's like, why does the UFO, if it's aliens, like, what are these, like young kids who want to put the pedals to the metal and burn rubber as they're taking off? Why does a UFO have to take off so fast? I mean, where's it going? And that's when the second night when I saw it, it was flying along, and then I'm going, what is it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just there. And so now when I have people who have UFO sightings, I say to them, hey, so you saw the UFO? Yeah. What was it doing? They go, it wasn't doing anything. It was just there. And then I say, well, do you think it saw you? I think so. Do you think it saw it knew you saw it? Yeah, I think so. And it's like, and do you think it wanted to see you? Yeah, I think so. And that's the whole thing. It's like, why do UFOs have lights on them? And so that's was theory wow that I came up with, was this idea that if you were on a different planet or wherever this is from, the grade 1 class says we want to raise consciousness on this planet. They're at this point where they need to raise consciousness. We have to realize it's not nuts and bolts. There's more to the universe than just material stuff. What do we do? So the grade 1 class says, oh, let's get some objects and let's put lights on them and fly them around. And it's like, why do UFOs have lights on them? They have lights on them so you can see them. They want you to see them. Otherwise, we don't have lights on our planes. Why would they have lights on their planes? Or they put crop circles. Why do they do crop circles? Why do they put these weird crop circles that are all symbolic? Because everybody's going to go, oh, it's a hoax. It's not a hoax. And everybody's going to go, how did they do it? Whether it's a hoax or aliens or whatever, how did they make that? How did they create that? And it creates this awe and curiosity. So people are sitting there and they're photographing and exchanging photographs of crop circles. They're trying to figure out what the pattern means and stuff like that. And then cattle mutilations. And then you study them for many years, and suddenly you come to realize that they're all downwind and downstream from nuclear power activities. And you go, oh, like that's what cattle mutilations is about. Why do they do like take off? Why do they make triangles in the sky? Why do they come? Now you hear the stories with experiencers. I mean, a lot of women will talk about this thing where they'll say, I had experience, and they'll show me their wrist, and there's a triangle on their wrist that disappears in about 2 or 3 days. So what? You come 1,000 light years across the universe to put a triangle on a woman's wrist? What is that about? And what it's about is that the woman you have this experience, and you go, that was a weird dream. Oh, I believe that I was with some aliens. And then you wake up and you look at your wrist and go, oh my God, it was a dream. It's real. And that's what they're doing. They're waking people up, but they're doing it indirectly. So it's the same thing as God. They're doing this thing, and they're forcing us to go through the work and figure it out. They're not going to give you the answers to the test. They want you to figure it out. So that's what they're doing. They're doing this awe and curiosity, this weird thing. And every time you see these weird things, it makes you try to figure it out and bring in guests to talk to this person, talk to that person, listen to some more stuff, and listen to people's stories. And you're sitting there trying to figure it out. And that's what they want. They want you to figure it out, because in the end, I firmly believe that we all came into the world that when you die, you know the answer to everything. As soon as you die, you know exactly how it works. And when you go into your next life, you go through the river of forgetfulness and you forget. And you do it for a reason, because you're not going to learn anything if you know all the answers when you come in here. So that's what it's basically about. We come here to learn, not to get stuff. We have this impression like we need to have, faster cars and, bigger weapons and cheaper gas. And that's why we need this technology and stuff. No, that's not what it's about. It's about learning lessons that we're here. And so it comes down to, it's not what cards how what cards are dealt to you. People always want to play the victim. Oh, I got a bad deal, and this and that, and complain about this and that. No, it's not about the cards that are dealt to you. It's how you play the cards, and that's what they're doing. They're doing this thing where they're indirectly talking to us, and they used to do it all different ways. So you go back to 1896. You talk about what I'm doing now. I've actually started to challenge people. So they say 1896, and they say it's extraterrestrial. I say, you really believe it's extraterrestrial? Yep, it's extraterrestrial. Okay, 1896, there was 10,000 sightings of wooden ships with propellers and balloons and guys hanging off of ropes and stuff. And they said they were from Mars. Do you seriously believe that these wooden ships came from Mars? They came through the vacuum of time and space and in from Mars. And then more importantly, in 1896, so where did those aliens go? They were here for 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly they're all gone. And then they come back in 1910. Then they come back in 1945, 1946, 1947 in droves, and they're different aliens. They've got suits on, and they've got turtlenecks and stuff like this, and they got bubble helmets, which is right out of 1940, 1950 comic books. And then they become the contactees. Then in 1959, 60, the contactees stop, and suddenly the Greys come in, and then the Greys go on, and then in 1980, the reptilians come in. And it's sort of like, well, where did the contactees go from the 1950s? And people go, well, I never thought about that. And it's like the whole thing is what's really going on? And so you start to get the idea that maybe what's going on is this is all like Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage, all the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits, and each man plays in many roles. So they come in 1896, and they come as because that's what people are going to understand. We're from Mars, we're from Venus. And then people believe they're from Mars and Venus, and then they go off stage and they come back as the contactees, and again they say from Mars and Venus, and then they leave, and then they come back in the 60s and they say nobody believes they're from Mars and Venus anymore. So then they say, oh, we're from Zeta Reticuli, we're from the Pleiades, and then everybody believes they're from the Zeta Reticuli and the Pleiades, and then you get these new ideas about multidimensional and that kind of stuff, multiple worlds, and then suddenly they're fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, ninth dimensional, 12th dimensional, and it's like as we progress, they keep changing as to what they are. And then now I actually start to ask people. I ask people. I had one where they called themselves the beings from Great Britain, and they wanted me to interview them. So I said, oh, fantastic. Oh, sure, I'll interview them. And so, of course, what's my question? Are you extraterrestrial? And what they said was, would you like us to be extraterrestrial? We could do that if you want. We could even take you to our planet. But no, we've always been here. We're not extraterrestrial. We've always been here. You're the visitor. And then you start to get this whole thing. So when I have experiences, I say, you're on the ship. You had contact? Yeah. Next time you see him, ask him, are you an extraterrestrial? So Sherry Wild, who's a very famous contactee, wrote the book called The Forgotten Promise about coming in this wave to raise the consciousness of the world. She asked her being said he was from Andromeda. So the publisher said, he's a Zeta, right? She said, yeah, he's a Zeta. He said, great, right? He said, yeah, he's a Zeta. And he said, well, he said he's from Andromeda. Yeah, that's what he said. Well, he can't be from Andromeda. If he's from Zeta, he's got to be from Zeta Reticuli. He's a Zeta. And she goes, really? She didn't know. So she goes, so when he comes, the guy's name was Da. So this Gray comes and she says, so what's going on here? My publisher said you should be from Zeta Reticuli. Are you actually an alien? And he said, no, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the creator. And so you start asking, and then I asked Nancy Tremaine, who actually was taken 2 months before with her girlfriend before Betty and Barney Hill. I asked her, I said, do you ever ask him if he's an alien? She said, yeah. And he said, I'm neither alien to this planet or any other planet. I've always been here. And this comes to this whole idea. Is there time and space? Because I wrote a book called the UFO Sky Pilots. And I talked to 36 people who claimed that they'd flown the craft. And what they would say is the being would say to them, where would you like to go? And they'd say, I'd like to see the Milky Way from a distance. And then they'd say, okay, it's within you. Go within yourself. When you can imagine where you want to go, then push the button, then do this, then we'll go there, or whatever the thing is. And suddenly they'd be there. And so the whole question is, if there's no time and space, then how many galaxies can you fit on the head of a pin? There may not be any out there. And if you even go to near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, if you have a near-death experience and you're floating above your body and you say, is the consciousness in the brain? Is the brain creating consciousness? And you can look back at your body and go, nope, the consciousness is floating here in the room. The brain down there is actually in my consciousness. And then the consciousness can float to the window and look out and see all the galaxies and the stars and whatever and say, are they out there or are they in my consciousness? And this comes to this whole idea. It may all be one thing and it's all within ourselves. And there's no out there. It's all within ourselves. And that's, if you listen to Stephen Greer, he uses a Sufi expression. The Sufi expression is, you see yourself as a puny form when within you, the entire universe is enfolded. And that's where I'm starting to go now, is this whole idea, what's really going on? Are these actually extraterrestrials? Or is this some like a game that we all come in and we play? And it's like the idea that people think because they played King Henry VIII in grade 12, they're suddenly King Henry VIII. No, you're not. You're an etheric being that came in to play a role. And when you leave the stage, you're gonna take off the puppet and you're gonna become who you actually are. You got to remember who you actually are. And that's where we sort of forget. We want to have the alien thing. We want to have a very simple answer because we're sort of Judeo-Christian. We believe that the end of the world is coming. Jesus is about to come back and stuff, and we're about at the end of the world. And we're going to get the final answers. And no, it just keeps going on and on. There's no beginning. There's no end, and the world just gets more complex and more complex and more complex. And I think indirectly that's whatever this phenomena is, and it actually may even be us. It may be our higher selves who have played this role where we come in. And we are actually the intelligence, because if everything is connected, if everything is one thing, then we are everything. We are God. We are everything. And it may be that God does not create the heaven and the earth. God creates the sparks of the divine, and we're the ones that are creating the heavens and the earth through consciousness. Because if you look back at the quantum physics guys said, consciousness is primary. Nothing gets behind consciousness. So consciousness is creating matter, not the other way around. And if that's true, then we are creating the physical world through consciousness. And that's where a lot of people don't want to believe it. And that's what I think the cover-up's about. Even Jim Semivan in his latest interview talks about that. He says, at one point, he says, how does the president tell people they're immaterial? And that's the whole thing. Do you want to stand the president up and say, this is all a big illusion, it's all Maya, there's no out there, and start this kind of stuff that they know? It would just blow people away. There's no way they're going to go there.
Well, first of all, there's so much to say. There was a report that I keep talking about. I've talked about it for years, but I can't remember if it was 2016 or maybe later. And I'm sure that it's gotten worse. That in America, the average citizen has a 7th grade or 6th grade reading level, a reading comprehension level. Now, you take what Jim Semivan said in that recent interview that I watched that like 2 or 3 times. And it does make sense. How do you have the president explain, okay, so you're thinking space alien, but let's talk about the idea of multiple dimensions and immaterial, consciousness, and how, Donald Hoffman, you mentioned Donald Hoffman. I've been going to sleep listening to Donald Hoffman because his ideas recently, ironically, have inspired some curiosities in me that I've never even considered. And one of the things he mentioned in an interview with Lex Friedman is, what if there are a billion consciousnesses, levels of different consciousness? Like there's us, there's animals, but what if there's like different dimensions, and in each dimension there are different consciousnesses that dominate that dimension? There could be billions of them. And if there are, you mentioned how there's these one beings that say we don't have all the answers, we have what we know, and then whatever below us. There could be a billion of that, and even more. So that kind of idea it's incomprehensible to the average citizen to be able to even digest, let alone just like to imagine what that means. What does it mean? They can't make sense of it. It might drive them crazy or make them angry in frustration of not understanding what the implications of that are. So yeah, I think the idea of withholding disclosure for the sake of keeping the sanity of people, if it is something to that effect, kind of makes sense.
Yeah, or they don't know. Like if you take a look what Jim Semivan says, and that's what I've done, because what happened to me when I had my second sighting, when it was flying away, I'm looking at it, I'm going, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. And I'm going, what's going on here? And then I tried to publish a book, and the publisher said, you may believe in this kind of stuff, don't count me among the unbelievers. And I went, what? And so all I was interested in is finding someone who knew the answer. Someone had to know what's going on here. Somebody's got to know what it's about. So I started looking for these high-level people. And what you see is, you listen to high-level people, Jim Semivan. And I say to people, listen carefully to what Jim Semivan said. He said this. He said, there does not appear to be any out there. Now, this guy got the briefing. I was told clearly that he was briefed by Ron Pandolfi in 2008 when he left the CIA, and he was told what was going on because he had the experience when he was in the CIA. They told him to leave it alone. This will ruin your career or whatever. He gets the briefing. So he's gotten the classified briefing. I don't know what high level he got, but he says there does not appear to be any out there. So what is he talking about? I mean, is he kidding? Like, what is this about? Or when he says, people say, all we got to do is put the dots together. And he says, I don't think there's any dots to put together. And so what's he saying? Or you listen to Barack Obama. Barack Obama said, he was asked after all the videos made thing. He said, yeah, we've got these videos, and yeah, they're spectacular, and we really don't know what they are. And then the latest one was Brennan just did an interview, who was CIA director, and he was asked, and he said, yeah, I saw those videos, and he said their eyebrow, just unbelievable. He said, but what they are, I have no clue. And that's the whole thing. People think the government is this has all this technology and they've got it all figured out. And I say, if the government actually had it figured out, the Americans should have won a war in the last 80 years. If you look back, the Americans haven't won a war in 80 years. They lost Vietnam. They were a stalemate in Korea. They went up against Somalia, which is the third worst army in the world, and they got hammered there. They were up against camel jockeys in Afghanistan, and they lost against guys that are driving around on camels. And if you look at in Ukraine, if they have this high technology, why are we doing trench warfare? And the Russians are attacking the front with golf carts. It's like, no, we don't have any secret technology. That's what I've come to the conclusion is they know, and that's what Jim Semivan said. Because people will say, oh, they got bodies and crafts. Yeah, Jim Semivan says, because you have bodies and crafts doesn't mean you know what you're dealing with. Yeah, they got bodies and crafts, but where are they coming? Unless it's got a Zeta Reticuli driver's license in the pocket, they don't even wear clothes. And you start looking at that kind of stuff. Well, I don't think the government really knows very much of anything, except the fact that we're dealing with something, and it's way beyond anything that we are able to do at this point.
So I
have to agree with that.
Yeah, and I also agree. And I was going to say, I apologize, Coley. This is my last question before. Because I know at some point I do want to get into the mushroom experience you said you had, but we'll circle back to that. There has been, I've listened to Jacques Vallée's audiobooks. I've read a lot of the old ufologists, David Jacobs and so forth, and there is this almost like a deception, but for the purpose of, if you will, moving the consciousness of humanity towards something, making us become aware of something. The socially engineering the entirety of humanity by doing these things you mentioned about how you see these. Why have lights? Why perform in these with these maneuvers? What for? You came all the way here from Zeta Reticuli, but you're just zipping around my backyard and taking off for no reason. Like, what's the point of doing that? You didn't talk to me. You didn't change anything. You just made me. You freaked me out, and now I'm thinking about it, and that's it. You leave me. That's all there. Why do stuff like that? And they could be. There was this idea that they are. David Grush said they're it's almost like at the hearing, he mentioned that there could be a something casting a shadow, so to speak, that it's from another dimension, but it's projecting an image of itself here. So to us, it looks like a craft or a being or whatever, but it may be something else that is controlling these things in our dimension or in our whatever this reality is. They may be able to create entire organisms using our biology, because there's a mix of us and other things allegedly. They're bipedal, they have 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, and so forth. They could be mixing our genetics, but it could be neither. It could be neither a gray or reptilian. It could be something else that's using genetic material from this planet and creating these organisms that are carrying out their bidding, so to speak. It could be a lot of different things. So, and it's so interesting to hear you say everything you just said, because I thought you were they're all aliens. I thought that you thought they were aliens. Now I'm hearing, at least for the first time that I heard, that you believe they may be something else entirely.
I think it's going to be a
multidimensional.
spiritual thing. And the bottom, it comes down to this idea of remember who you actually are. You are not a physical being. You are an etheric being playing a physical role. So they can come as, and that's what, there's a guy, I don't know if you've ever interviewed him, is Yossi Ronan. He's an experiencer out of Israel. He had an encounter with beings in the 1980s in Los Angeles in his bedroom, and they were like grays, except they were green. And what they said to him is, when we come into your world, we take on a body. We can take on whatever body we want. We don't have to have a body, but we need it to work in your world. You can do the same thing. You just don't realize it. And that's the bottom line. So when you talk to someone like Barbara Streisand's stepson, his name is Chris Peters. He's a full-blown experiencer. And what he told me was they told him that when we come into your world, we go into your head. We see what's in your head. And with whatever's in your head, that's what we use to build a lesson. So if you're in fear, you're going to see grays. If you're very religious, like the Mission Rama people, you're going to see these biblical type aliens with long hair and wearing robes and the White Brotherhood and go all this kind of stuff. It depends. And even Kit Green, who's running the experiencer survey for the government, says that people will see whatever their belief system is, and that 2 people in the same experience can see 2 different things. Or if you go to Lukatsky says this thing that blows everything apart is the idea that he said, and the last interview he did was the most dramatic interview I've ever heard anybody do. And he ran the DIA program. And that's where he says, we got 200,000 sightings in the OSAP program. And he said, it's like driving down a road, down a freeway, and every single car is different. And it's like, wow. It's like every single UFO sighting is different. And there's this story that, at Skinwalker Ranch where the 6 guys had the Gen 3 glasses, and this object comes over the ridge and it flies by, and all these 3 guys watch it with the Gen 3 glasses. And at the end of the night, they compare notes and everybody saw something different. And it's this idea that we all think there's this common thing out there. We don't realize we're part of what actually we're seeing. So when wow. Chris Peters tells me at one point, he says to me, because people say, well, it's physical. Don't worry, it's physical. And so Chris told me, he told me the story. He said, he calls me up and he says, we saw an owl in the bathroom. My wife went in the bathroom and there was an owl, and it was 5 feet tall and was sitting on the vanity. And I said, it was 5 feet tall. And then he says, yeah, it was. And I said, you're not sure it's 4 feet tall? It was 5 feet tall? He said, it was 5 feet tall. It was in the bathroom. I went and looked and it was there. I said, was it a real owl? He said, it was a real owl. And then he went running to get his camera, and he comes back, and of course it's gone. So what? It's from Zeta Reticuli, this 5-foot owl flew across time and space and stuff. And you start to realize that they can appear as whatever they want, and they're not here to really do anything. Because one of the things people forget is this idea that 40% of all experiencers say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. In near-death experience, 31% of people who've had near-death experiences say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. When I was under psychedelics, I had 2 experiences, and I'm not sure if it was everything, but it was a lot. It was like that. And I remember the first time they showed it to me, it was like, that looks so mechanical. It was like explaining everything. Like everything was there. And you can't bring it back. So that you can't bring it back. And all you remember is I knew the answer to everything. So if the aliens give you access to this intelligence where you know the answer to everything, that means that whoever this intelligence is, they have the answer to everything in the universe. So they're not here to study the plants. They're not here to build stuff. They're not here to do this. They know the answer to everything. They're doing something completely different. And I think it's raising our consciousness, getting us elevated to the level without giving it to us. So we want to be left-brained. We want them to land and say, we're here to bring you freedom and democracy, Jesus and McDonald's, and here's how it works and stuff like that, and give us the technology and the weapons and then go away. And that's not what they're doing. They're doing a right brain thing where it's all symbolic, and they're forcing us to sort of figure it out. And it's a way of teaching without getting involved, because you have this thing about, you can't interfere with somebody else's evolution. We want them to laugh. So I think the way it's done is that you have a situation where people will complain about, oh, it's terrible, and everything's gone, the politics is terrible, and this and that, and whining and complaining, and Kleenex and all this kind of stuff. And I always say, you got to remember who you actually are. Remember that when you came in, what if reincarnation is a fact, we didn't come in here randomly. We came in here to do something. So when you came in, it's like there's this mess going on. You say, hey, I'll go volunteer. I'll volunteer. And you go in. So you got to remember whatever mess you find yourself in, however bad it is, you got to remember that you may have chosen at this time and this place to come into whatever mess you find yourself in for a reason, because you chose to come here at this time and this place in the middle of this mess because you volunteered to try to change it. And that changes us from victims to people who are actually trying to change things.
I agree. I've always said that. I was like, I could see myself like, oh, this is no problem. I can handle this. Send me down there. And I'm like, now I'm here. I'm like, come on, it's relentless. But I think you're right. And then to another point, my grandmother was the first to see a UFO. And when she saw one, it looked totally different. They got pictures of it or whatever. It was like an actual metallic craft. The first one that I encountered was 50 foot in diameter, measured by MUFON, and 30 feet away. And there was no doubt or no question in my mind that. So I tend to think, at first I was like, well, they didn't evolve, but maybe these are points of reflection. Like, this is a journey. This isn't like all of a sudden instantly the veil. No, this is a journey that you go on. And it changes once you encounter that craft. That's when my whole entire world changed. And by the time I saw the second one, then the experiences started after that. But there was such profound things that happened, and like the markings, like you talk about, like I've had the markings too. And I was wondering, like, what is this? I think it's confirmation. I had drawn a star map, and it ended up on my leg. Like I drew it in December, and then going fast forward to July, it ended up on the back of my leg, and I knew exactly what it was and exactly what I had drawn. So it took me back. So I was like, I call them points of reflection. So what I'm hearing you say makes a lot of sense, but I'm wondering what you think our part is in this as humans. Like, what exactly, if they know everything, like, what are we here to actually do?
Well, we don't know everything. So our role is to be curious and to talk. So we all, the three of us, may have had an agreement before we came in. You guys said, we're going to run a podcast. I'm going to come on the podcast. We're going to talk about this. Because what happens is that's how you raise consciousness. If you go back, we complain, nobody takes us seriously. We're the Rodney Dangerfield of science and stuff like that. And you got to go back to quantum physics. The guy who invented quantum physics was Max Planck. And Max Planck basically had this situation where he says, you do not convince your opponent that you're right by convincing him he's wrong. Science advances when people die, one funeral at a time. Your opponents die out, and the new generation is not offended with the idea. So the idea is that we talk back and forth. And the example I can give you is, so people will say, nobody's taking me seriously, but you can look at the situation where you can go to the darkest corners of Africa. You can go to the backwoods of China where, they haven't really met white people or whatever. And you can go UFO. Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah. Area 51. Yeah, I know what that is. Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, I know what that is. And you are near-death experience. So people may not believe it, but everybody knows what it is. And that's what happens as the consciousness rises. And that's what happened, as it's like this idea that the government is acclimatizing people by leaking stuff into the UFO community. So it starts in 47, very heavy. And I remember I wrote an article in 2009 called The 64 Reasons the Government Has Decided Not to Tell You the Truth. And it was all these things that Stephen Greer and other people have brought up. The stock market will melt down because people are going to realize oil's not worth anything. Religious people are going to jump off bridges and all this kind of stuff. And what happened? 2017, suddenly the New York Times runs front page story and says, oh yeah, the government, UFOs are real. The government's actually studying them. And everybody goes, I knew that already.
Yeah, it's
Okay, so where are they? And that's the whole thing, is it gets acclimatized, and you get to the point where everybody realizes, like I said, people, when did gay marriage sort of become acceptable? And everybody goes, I don't know, like what, 10 years, 15 years ago? I don't remember. And it'll just change. It just changes, and we don't realize it's changing, where people will just generally accept. You can ask kids today, go on the street, and kids will basically say, yeah, there's aliens, there's this, and they believe it all, because they're not in the old school where they had to accept this new idea. That's how it moves. So our role is to come, like you hear this whole thing that was Susie Hansen brought up, and Dolores Cannon brought up, this idea about the three waves. So it may be like with your family, your mother, you, your kids, whatever, the three waves, so that people will say, well, it's genetic. They're looking at our genes. Well, it could be a spiritual thing too, that you agree to come in as the child of somebody else, and you have this agreement over 3 generations to bring this experience to the world. So naturally, your parents are going to have UFO sightings. You're going to have UFO sightings. Your kids are going to, and it's not got anything to me to do with genetics. It's got to do with the spiritual thing, that spiritual people are coming in to change the world, that they've agreed to come in these 3 waves to raise consciousness at this point in time. And we have that role, and some people have a role to learn envy or greed or all different lessons. And our lesson is that we've come in to do this UFO thing, and that it's not random. We didn't have a random UFO sighting. It's not like you were in the wrong place, because when I started in 1975, that's what people believed. It was you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time to see a UFO
yeah, I
sighting.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you saw 2 UFOs, nobody would talk to you. I mean, come on, you saw 2 UFOs? Come on. People didn't believe you saw 1 UFO. And now we know that people will see, if you're an experiencer, you're going to see them all the time. You're going to have contact with them all the time. And the whole idea has changed, and people think it's always been the same. And I keep telling people, the aliens are changing, the phenomena is changing. We had the ground traces. Stanton Friedman used to say, oh, we got the physical evidence. We got these ground traces. They land and they put the pod marks and they burn the grass out. That hasn't happened for 2 decades. I wrote a letter. I put it on Twitter with Ted Phillips, who was the guy, the expert. In 2001 already, I wrote this letter. I said, Ted, am I wrong, or have the ground traces stopped? And then he went, well, yeah, sort of, he said. We used to have 1 every second day. He said there hasn't been 1 in 2001 yet. And people don't realize that. There are no ground traces anymore. There's no windows in UFOs anymore. There's no angel hair. These in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were dropping angel hair. That doesn't happen anymore. And the phenomena is changing. It's morphing, it going along. And then they start the crop circles. Then they do the Cadron relations. Then they stop the Cadron relations. And then the orbs come in, and it just changes one thing after another. And we go along, and we make the assumption, because we haven't been in it very long, that it's all the way it is, that things are happening. But as you pointed out, that we got to realize that the population is very fluid. You mentioned this, Jim Semivan mentioned, and actually the figure is 53%. 53% of people in the United States are reading at a grade 6 level. And if you take 2/3 of the people in the United States and you put a map on a table of the United States, 2/3 of them cannot find Miami, Florida on the map. Or if you take the one I use, is if you take a look at Google search attention span of a 2-year-old, it'll come up 4 to 6 minutes. If you take a look at the attention span, Google search attention span of someone on the internet, it used to be 12 seconds. It's now down to 8 seconds. So when you put a comment on Twitter and somebody criticizes you, you can be darn sure they've never read a book on it. They have not. It's the whole idea. It's the ego. I know the answer to everything. I know more about this than the generals, and I know the answer to everything. And they have not spent more than 7 seconds looking at your Twitter post before they start giving you their opinion of why you're wrong and why they know exactly what's going on. And that's what's happening. Is the population is so fluid. They just sort of go along with whatever's happening. And so that's why the phenomenon is sort of leading us along rather than dropping down. Because even Bashar, the alien channeler that talked about, he said, why you want us to land? He said, why would we land in a place where everybody's crazy and has a gun?
Yeah.
Well, this makes me want, because Peter Levenda kind of suggests that, and I think other people have suggested, this idea that they may be using this cultural change, like the phenomena. There may be an element of it that is using that shortening of the attention span, the changing of culture, the use of technology, and these advancements as a way to kind of, again, socio-engineer humanity on a social level, in a very personal social level, towards some kind of end. What do you think about that?
So in saying that real quick, just to add on to that, what do you think of the virtual reality then, Grant? Like, are we recreating like another, you know what I
Well,
mean? Because
well,
that to me bothers
that
me.
is what it's going to come down to. That's what I'm saying. It's going to turn out to be 5,000-year-old secret that the Easterners knew already. It's all Maya. There is no out there. There is no time, no space. It's all Maya. It's all consciousness. It's all illusion. It's like God is there's actually an experiment I want to do. I want to do the 5-methoxy DMT. I find a place where I can do it. And the 5-methoxy DMT is the ultimate, is where you're in the light and there is no form to anything. So my idea of it is that everything is consciousness, and there may not even be like a God. We are all God. We are all one thing, and God is still. It's consciousness, and it's still. And the idea was, I think it's even in the Eastern traditions, is when it moves, when the vibration starts, the illusion starts. Everything is vibration. Or as Paul Selleck, the channeler, I'm big into channelers because channelers are able to get in, good channelers are able to get in and pull material out of the field. And he has this idea, there is only one note being played in the universe. Everything is one note being played at different octaves. Or if you take a look at John Wheeler came up with the idea that there's only one electron. These bizarre ideas that there's only one thing. And we have this illusion of time and space. And so I'll remind people, I'll say, okay, you're in a dream. Is there time and space in the dream? And they go, well, yeah. Well, is there time and space in the dream? No, there's not. You interpret it's as real can be. Or if you go to the one book I always recommend people now read, I was offered to interview this guy, and I got the guy sent me the book, and I never interviewed the guy. The book is called Coma. I did the whole thing on consciousness. This is a new level of consciousness. Go read the book called Coma. And it's about people during COVID. They put these people in deep state comas, and they piles of them. And there's actually, if you go to Facebook, you'll see these groups surviving coma, yes. and these people will describe the same as DMT experiences. So they'll say and I had a friend, his wife, when H1N1 was going around, she was put in an induced coma for 16 days. And she told me, I remember she telling these horror stories about coming out of this thing, about what happened. And you start looking at that, and they say, not only like near-death experience people will say, or out-of-body experience will say, it was more real in the real world. These people will say one step beyond that. They'll say, this was not an illusion. This was not my imagination. This actually happened to me. And they were gone for 80 years. They were in coma for 16 days or 3 weeks or whatever it was. And they said, I was gone for 80 years. The one woman was raped every night and killed every single night, and she said she had 4 kids while she was gone. The one person was gone 100,000 years. The same as if you go to DMT, you look at the Spirit Molecule documentary, and the one guy's on there, and he wakes up and he goes, how long was I gone? And the guy goes, 10 minutes. And he goes, 1,000 years in 10 minutes. And you'll get DMT people who say they were gone 2,500 years. So were they gone 2,500 years? Or I talked to Chris Bledsoe. I said, Chris, Tell me about that thing when you got abducted. He was abducted for 4 hours, and he said it was 4 months. When I was gone for 4 months, and they took me around in this orb, and it was like made out of glass, but you couldn't see it, you could touch it, but it was. And he said, and then I said about the engine, and this is what Lukatsky said as well in the interview. He said we got inside the craft, and he said there was no engine, there was no fuel tank, there was nothing. So what? And Lukatsky said, so what are we dealing with here? And I said to Chris, I remember you said about the engine. He said, Grant, I never saw an engine. And then you start looking at this whole thing and you start realizing. And so I actually went back because I did the original story. I did the original, it was called UFOs Area 51 and Government Informants. We were doing Area 51 when the story broke in 1989. My friend and I wrote a book, and we had this whole thing with Area 51 and the story of the 115. So I went back to George Knapp, and he didn't answer the question, but the question was, hey, George, you ever have anybody else come up and say the craft is powered by 115? And then there was 9 objects that he saw inside the hangars there, and they were all different. And the question is there actually a propulsion system, or is every propulsion system different, like the UFO crafts? And then I started looking, and I still haven't found 2 propulsion systems where 2 experiencers will come and describe the same propulsion system. In the 1950s, we're talking about crystals powering the thing. Bob Lazar talks about the 3 gravity waves. People are talking about the Tom DeLonge started the whole thing about the wave thing where they could float the piece of metal and stuff like that. And you start looking and you realize like it may be all individual, that we are experiencing this stuff, that there really individuality is what it's about, because people assume that there are patterns. But if you take a look at a big tree will have 200,000 leaves on it, and you say, "Oh, the leaves are different. The leaves are the same." No, every single leaf on a tree is different. They're not the same.
Like
Every single
yeah.
snowflake is the same. And you start looking at this stuff and you realize uniqueness is the pattern. Even identical twins are different. They'll have different fingerprints, they'll have different hair patterns and stuff like that. And that's what they're sort of teaching us. When you start looking carefully at these people's experiences and you start, this doesn't make sense. And that's where you got to go. So you got to go to the things, the paranormal things that don't make any sense, or what they used to call the damned facts. Like these things don't make any sense. Like what is this? And that's where the Nobel Prizes are. That's what Gary Nolan said. I'm not interested in the 95% that fall inside the bell curve. I'm interested in the 5% outside the bell curve. That's where the Nobel Prizes are. That's what you got to look at. You got to look at the paranormal phenomena, the stuff that doesn't make sense, because it's telling you something. It's telling you something that you believe is wrong.
Real quick, we got to go to break here in 60 seconds, but I got to say something to that. What you're saying is so ironic for many reasons, but I'm reading a book called Poet Anderson of Nightmares. It's one of Tom DeLonge's books with Suzanne Young, and it's ironic that you mentioned about people having these lapses of time, or this time dilation, these dreams where they're having years and years in another realm or another experience or whatever, because that's literally what the book is about. It's about 2 people, one of them goes into a coma and they experience another time and space and everything like that. You're mixing the Donald Hoffman's ideas about the idea of how consciousness is not the emergent thing. The brain emerges from consciousness. It's reverse of what scientists believe today. You're also talking about the idea that these craft may be all different. There's a bunch of different propulsion systems. Propulsion I use in quotations because some of them don't really have a propulsion system. They may be all just different. Crystals and flying ships with boats and this is absurd, as Jacques Vallée says. The absurdity is just like, it's mind bending. This is such an interesting conversation to me specifically. This is really profound. But when we come back, I'm gonna ask you some questions about that experience you said you had with psychedelics. So in the meantime, everybody, hang tight. We will be right back with Grant Cameron. And we're going to ask that question, like I said, because I know there's somebody that's been asking us or asking about that specifically. So hang tight, everyone. We're right back. Sorry. 1 second.
Sure.
They're watching from the shadows, an intelligence beyond our own. Whistleblowers shouting warnings, researchers feeling all alone. We're blinded by our arrogance, thinking we're the only ones in control. But they've been among us, preparing for their role. This revelation is shock to They're not like us, there's something more. A non-human intelligence knocking on our door. Whistleblowers risk it all. Researchers sounding the alarm once more, but we're too focused on ourselves. Blind to the signs of what's to come. Will we wake up in time, or will we be left numb? We've been warned, but will we listen? Something is coming, we can feel it in the air. Our force so powerful, beyond compare. They've been trying to warn us, but we just don't care. We're not prepared, it's too much to bear. They're not like us, there's something more. A non-human intelligence knocking on our door. Whistleblowers risking it all. Researchers sounding the alarm once more, but we're too focused on ourselves. Blind to the signs of what's to come. Will we wake up in time, or will we be left numb? We've been warned, but will we listen? Something is coming, we can feel it in the air. Our force so powerful, beyond compare. They've been trying to warn us, but we just don't care. We're not prepared, it's too much to bear. Something is coming, we can feel it in the air. Our force so powerful, beyond compare. They've been trying to warn us, but we just don't care. We're not prepared, it's too much to bear.
I talked to Drew. He said he can come on. I sent a text yet. Okay, cool.
Okay, so it basically was based on this idea. We wrote a book called Contact Modalities, which goes through 70 some ways that you can shut down the left brain, get into the field, get material. And I looked at musicians, I looked at poets, I looked at, where famous music comes from. In fact, there was one just posted. Burton Cummings played for the Guess Who in Canada. I'm in Canada. The Guess Who was outselling the Beatles in the late 1960s. They're from the city I'm from. And they told this story about playing in Toronto. And they were between two shows back to back. And they're in the back. He's in the back. He's buying albums behind the stage, and he hears the second set starting, and they're playing what would become the lead sort of music into American Woman, the song that became one of the most famous songs ever come out of Canada. And he goes running on stage, and he said, "I didn't know what to sing." He said, "I just tried to sing something that actually rhymed." And he plays this song, American Woman, Get Away From Me. And he did this whole thing. And this actually was played. Nixon tried to stop it from being played at the White House. And he said they played the song. And then there was a kid in the front row who had this tape recorder. He's holding it. This is when handheld tape recorders came out. The kid's holding this tape recorder up. And they realize this kid's going to bootleg the show. So they tell the manager, get that tape off the kid. So they get the tape, and after the show, they're listening to this the tape of this kid's thing, and they hear American Woman, the first song in the second set, and they go, where'd that come from? And they didn't even remember playing it. They had no idea. And they said if it had not been for the kid with the tape recorder, the song American Woman would not have existed. It was #1 for 3 weeks, and it was the biggest selling. Anyway, so this is his idea. Like, where do these songs come from? Like, where does a musician get stuff? And a lot of musicians will talk about Paul McCartney, the song Yesterday, the most produced song of the 20th century, came in a dream. And it was this idea that you can get in the field and everything's in the field. All the answers are there, all the music's there, whatever. And you just got to go in, grab the material, and come back. So that's why I did the psychedelic thing, because I had tried all sorts of other things, lucid dreaming. I tried all these different techniques, and I just couldn't do it. But I knew that psychedelics, you could do it if you took the right amount. You were going in there. You may not find it the greatest experience of your life, and it is very traumatic when you do high dose. It is pretty traumatic. It is. In fact, now I've done 27. And I'm petrified. I have to talk myself into it for weeks to do a session, because it is very, very unnerving when you get that high dose. It's like what happens is they turn the volume. Your normal volume of emotions and stuff would be about 2. They turn it to like 12, and then they run these things through you, and it's just like everything is just off the chart. And so what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to do this, and took me a long time to finally do it, and I did it according to the book. So I did it according to the John Hopkins the protocols. If you look at John Hopkins University, they have a psychedelic psilocybin lab there, and what they would do is experiments with people where people had less than 6 months to live, and they would give them the five grams, and these people would be completely content to die and stuff like that. So I knew all the stuff. I knew how it worked. I would use the exact list. They have its songs. 5-hour playlist, and I used the exact playlist. I didn't change anything. I went according, because I was so scared about what was going to happen. And I went in, and basically it was this idea where I said, okay, I want to be in the field. I want to learn something. What do I need to learn? And I didn't have no intentions, no objectives, whatever. And the first one I remember was I was at the U.S. border, and this was just when they started to, just before they started putting kids in cages. I was coming across from Mexico with my assistant. We were in Tucson, Arizona. We were coming back, and it was a long weekend, and we were at the border for 2 hours. And I was just upset because, man, it's taken forever. We're walking, this long line at the border. We're trying to get across, and there was these people from El Salvador who were there. It was two kids. One girl she had only one arm, and she was bouncing this ball with her 7-year-old brother or whatever it was. And I'm thinking, how could she be, a threat to the United States? She only got one arm. And I felt so sorry for these people because it was cold. And I was upset. And I'm thinking like, wow. So then as we were going back to Tucson, I'm thinking back, and I'm saying, I wonder if they got across. I wonder if they got through yet. I mean, I wonder if they've been processed and gotten through yet. Because we were sitting there, and they had these blankets. It was cold and stuff like that. And so the first session it starts off, I'm in a cage, and this kid is there, this 7-year-old kid. And he's looking at me. And he's just looking up at me. I'm looking down at this kid, and I start crying. And I'm thinking, and he's not saying anything, but the idea comes across like, you saw me, and you didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. You didn't try to help me. And I'm going, I'm sorry. And I was also, and so the first one was on this thing of compassion. And then it was despair. The second lesson was despair. And I would know within a couple of minutes what the lesson was. It would be I know what this lesson is. And it would do this thing. And I remember the one with, was on death. The sixth one was on death. And it was basically, this is just from before COVID started. And so I was above the earth. Well, the first one I woke up, and I'm in a coffin. And how would I know I'm in a coffin? But I know I'm in a coffin. I'm lying in this coffin, and I'm in this huge cathedral, and I'm looking up, and it's very quiet, and it's very peaceful or whatever. I'm looking up, and I can see the light is coming across the coffin, and it's coming from one side. And I know in a big cathedral, you have the stained glass windows behind you, but the light should be coming from both sides. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm lying in this coffin, I'm going, why is the light only coming from one side? And then the second thing I was above the earth, and they're showing me people dying. It was like these white sort of misty things coming up. I was looking over Western Canada, and these white misty things coming up. And then he said, look to the south. And I looked to the south, and this is before COVID started. And it was just thousands and thousands of people dying. It was like, wow. And I didn't know till later, but so there was these 6 things with death. So I had these lessons, And the one that I don't remember very much. I wrote a book called Psilocybin School on the first 15. And the thing that I got key lessons, the one key lesson I learned, and I have it in the front of the book. The key lesson is, and it's the whole page, it says, surrender is the rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule. Because I had people talk about, 30% of all people who do high dose psilocybin will have, at one point, they'll have fear will set in, and they'll have a very bad sort of experience. And I had 5 sessions where I was basically in hell. That's all you can describe it. It was like unbelievable. It was like you can't even imagine. And so I'm in this situation 5 times. And I remember the one time I was meditating, I broke the protocol. I didn't play the audio, the playlist. And I said, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to go in the next room and meditate. And I was in there, and suddenly I was in this situation, and I'm going, I got to get out of here, and I got to get the computer on, and it shuts down your left brain. That's what happens. Your default mode network shuts down. And if you're doing 5 grams, good luck trying to turn a computer on or trying to find the computer. It was like, and it was just this despair. And then what happened was, this is where the lesson came in. It was sort of like every time it would be the same thing. So I would say like, I can't take it anymore. And the one that was like these things were coming at me. They weren't hitting me, but they were like little tiny sort of like balls, and they were making this big but noise. And I was trying to duck from these things. And I just kept going on and on. I couldn't stop this thing, and I just kept going. And and then I said to myself, okay, I took the drug. I got nobody else to blame for this. Nothing. Okay, that's the way it's going to be. I'm in hell. I believed I was in hell. I'm in hell. This is the way it's going to be for eternity. Like I was gone, instantly gone, and it was in this bliss state, just unbelievable. And so I said, okay, I know this now. I know if you get into this state where they make you think that you're in hell and it's going to go on forever, you got to surrender. That's the idea. You got to surrender. That's what the killing of the ego. What happens when you do the 5 gram, the reason you get in the field is because it kills your ego. It shuts down that left brain, and you're completely in the field. And the more you take, the more it shuts down the left brain. So I said, okay, next time I got to know. Second time, man, same thing. And it's like they made you forget. So I forgot the same thing. It's like saying, oh, I can't get out of this. And it was like sort of, this was going on. And then I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to be in hell forever. This is the way it's going to be. And boom, it was gone again. And I go, how did they do that? It's like, this is bizarre. I mean, they fooled me again. It's like they make you actually think it's going to go on forever. So that was one of the key lessons I learned, was this idea that people will talk, same with near-death experience. You'll find that people who have bad near-death experiences are people who are trying to hang on. Their ego will not let go. And once you let go, once you shut down the ego and you let go, you go into this bliss state. So that was one of the key lessons I learned. And then I had this thing where I had the ego thing. A lot of it has faded away. A lot of the experiences, luckily I wrote them down. And then I wrote down, I may have enough for a second book, but they started going south about number 22, 23. Either nothing really happened that I significantly remembered, because when I first started, I was actually taping this stuff. I was actually taping while the thing was going on. So I had a little tape recorder, and you can hear the music in the background, and I'm describing what's happening. Okay, this is happening. I'm seeing the lights and the psychedelic, the colored lights and stuff like that. And but I didn't want to do it anymore, because when you use the tape recorder, it sort of keeps your left brain online, because you're realizing that your tape recorder is going and you're trying to say things. And then I would swear an awful lot. I would come out, and I remember the one time I said, I was talking to a girl. There is a woman. I'm dealing with a woman, because I never saw anything. It was almost this idea like Jim Semivan talks about in his experience. He talks about this thing where he says, he was asked about his experience with the beings. And the guy said, was there any telepathy? And he said, that was the strangest thing. He said, you know what? There was a being behind me, and it had this guardian type thing going on about it. And I went, guardian type thing? Was it on the right side or left side? Because Michael Newton will talk about when you die, you go in front of the council between 3 and 12 people, and your spirit guide stands behind you on the left side. And this whole notion is that this whole thing may be your spirit guide is leading you through this UFO experience, and you think it's really happening, and this is all a big play that's going on. And so when I was in there, I suddenly realized, after I had all these other realization with Jim Semivan, that this may be sort of a play and your spirit guide or your higher self is with you, that I never saw anybody, but I could feel. And the one time it was absolutely for sure. I could that sense it was a woman. It's like people talk about aliens. You see the alien, you say, do you have any clothes on? No. Do you have any sex organs? No. Well, how do you know it was a man or a woman? I just knew. I knew it was a woman. I knew it was a man. And it has this sense. And I had this sense. I remember I was swearing and I was talking to the tape recorder. I can't believe it. I'm talking to a woman. This is a woman. And then it was the whole idea was I realized in my psilocybin experiences that I never saw anybody. It was sort of like someone was with me, talking to me, whatever. And that's when I started to realize that I had with the sky pods, that I had a guy who was, his name is David. He was a U.S. Air Force colonel out of Los Angeles who had flown the craft. And he said, he told me the story, and he said, I thought it was a dream. I said, everything is a dream. Just tell me your story. So he tells me the story. He's standing in the craft, and there's somebody behind him. He said, I don't know if it's aliens or it's human beings. Somebody's standing behind me, and they say, okay, go ahead and do it. And he said, I don't know what to do. And then the voice says, you know what to do. Just do it. And he puts his hands on the panel, and he starts flying the craft. And then I'm thinking, hey, that's the same story. It's the same thing. With my psilocybin experience, there's somebody behind you. Is this your soul guide standing behind you and leading you through this play? So then I actually started asking questions. I went to Whitley Strieber. I said, hey, Whitley, you're on the craft, weren't you? He said, yeah. I said, hey, do you ever have the experience where there's somebody behind you and you're not allowed to look at them? They're behind you and they're telling you what to do. And he goes, all the time. And you start realizing these patterns. And this is this idea about what's actually going on here. Is this actually an event taking place? Or is this like a stage play where we're creating this out of consciousness to teach ourselves lessons, and it's our higher self or our spirit guide that's behind us and doing this kind of stuff. So the psilocybin thing was dramatic. It's still sort of and then the playlist. I hated the playlist because part of the playlist had this German classical music, and it was like Nazi Germany because they have this sort of high music and then low music, and it's taking you through the high points of your life and the low points of your life and this low stuff. And I go, oh no, not that German music again. So, it's like, and you have to go through it, and you have these very low periods when you're in the experience or whatever. But so I wrote up 15 of the first experiences, and the main lesson was this one about the ego, that basically it's about shutting down the default mode network, the ego, and this idea that surrender is the rule. So if you ever get into a near-death experience where you're having a bad near-death experience or a bad alien experience or a bad psychedelic experience, the key is surrender. As soon as you surrender, it will instantly be over.
So real quick,
Grant.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I just wanted to say that last time, I believe, Drew, you were on the interview with Grant Cameron, weren't you, when we did one?
Drew's with us right now, Drew Banke. Drew,
we
can see
brought...
you. We can't hear you, Drew. I think you're muted here on our end.
I'll let Drew tell you what he does, but I
No,
thought it
here
was
you
very
go.
interesting. Okay. Oh, I was just saying, you were on the last interview that we did with Grant Cameron, weren't you?
I'm not sure.
remember.
It's been a while. Hey, Grant, how's it going, brother?
Good to see you again. Been a while.
Good to see you. They're just talking about psychedelics, so I had to jump in here.
Yeah,
There you go, yeah.
Grant, you remember him. So Drew he's done some very interesting experiences with Native Americans, and so Drew, why don't you go ahead and, I don't want to tell your story. Why don't you tell Grant why you're here? Why did we bring you on to have this conversation with us, especially at this time when we're talking about psychedelics?
Well, Grant mentioned 5-MeO, man. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I've been working with for like the past 2 years. So, Grant, if you're gonna do 5-MeO with anybody, come to Colorado, brother. I'll take care of you. But I don't think I need to introduce myself to Grant. We've known each other for a while.
Okay.
He gave my first big interview back in 2019 and kind of gave me the confidence to keep sharing my story. So a lot of me being here is thanks to Grant Cameron. So
yeah. So what do you see with the 5-methoxy DMT? What do you believe that's going back to source? Is that what?
Yeah, that's source code. That's I believe all these different levels, like dimensional fields and like ayahuasca, I believe that's like the spirit of Mother Earth. But all these is different vibrational codes. So 5-MeO makes you vibrate to a point where you can experience source and really realize who it is. It's you and everything around you. And but it's not very visual. I've done it several times, but I shared a story here recently. It was with 5-MeO, and I was trying to figure out why is this like depression like deep in me, even after all the ayahuasca ceremonies and everything. And 5-MeO helped me figure out that through a ceremony that I did with it, where it took me back to the delivery room, and it let me relive that, not in a visual sense, but in a coherent sense where I could hear and sense everything. And I was hearing, because I was adopted at 5 days old, so that's like stuck with me my whole life.
Yeah.
But it took me back to the delivery room, and I heard the nurses and the doctors like conversing back and forth, saying this baby's is going up for adoption. And even though I didn't hear that or remember it coherently, the cells in my body, just like Dr. Emoto had talked about, like it recorded those vibrations, and that's been with me the whole time. But 5-MeO finally let me dig that out,
Yeah. And the thing I noticed as well, I think you sort of pointed out, was the idea that you can have the same sort of thing, but it's the cultural overlay. So people say DMT, but if you take ayahuasca, in that you take the DMT there, you're going to have jaguars, and you're going to have earth, and it's a female being, Mother Ayahuasca. But if you do DMT in America, then you get the little elves, the male thing.
Yeah.
So you see that there's these different levels, and each experience is different. And it's almost like, I wouldn't call them dimensions, because I always try to stay away from the idea of naming things, because that's what I think the problem is. Everything's a verb. And what we do in science is we want to name it. We want to make it inanimate. So we say there's levels and stuff like that. To me, it's like you're in the water. And if you can float from the bottom of the water where it's really dark into the sort of the lighter areas, and you talk to the fish, you say to the fish, so what level am I on? And the fish goes, what are you, idiot? You're not level, you're on the water, you idiot. It's like, and it's just the closer you get to source, the different the experience you have. And it's all one vibration. It's all like this one note. And we want to, science has mixed it up by naming things. And that's what you get. You can go back to ancient Eastern stuff, the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao is the beginning of heaven and earth. The Tao is the mother of 10,000 things, of all things. And it's like, but the Tao is not a named thing. You can't name it. It's a noun. And that's what we do. We make these mistakes of naming everything and turning it into inanimate objects.
That's so right. I heard you speaking earlier about that people have different visions depending on what their religious background or spiritual background. And I wanted to speak on that real quick. I've seen that personally several times while leading ayahuasca ceremonies. One person will be in communication with Buddha. The person right beside him will be in communication with Jesus, and the person right beside him will be in communication with ayahuasca. Normally, if you don't have a strong religious like background, it will speak to you in the form of like animal spirits or ayahuasca spirits. But if you have a strong religious background, and that's what I like to call it, your language that the spirits know how to talk to you in, they will form it around that. So you're dead on that.
Yeah, like I had the experience. I wrote 2 books on the Mission Rama people out of Mount Shasta, where they open these portals, Zendras. The best UFO stories I've ever heard come from Mission Rama. But in theirs, I say to people, I defy you to find any Mission Rama story where there's a reptilian or grayer or a mantid. And they are very religious. They do this meditation, oming and stuff, and they try to raise their vibration for 2 days, and then the encounter takes place and stuff like that. And I remember the one where they had opened this Zendra, and they went inside the Zendra. The first year of 2015, this 10-foot being was standing there with the biblical, with the hair and all this sort of stuff, and they all were there, and each was having a different experience. One was hearing this sort of weird voice, and one was hearing different messages. They all had different experiences, even though they're all looking at this being. And then in 2016, basically the same people were in the Zendra, except for a guy who was a U.S. Navy guy out of Los Angeles, who was an interpreter for Paula Harris. So he'd gone in there, and he shouldn't have been in there. And I remember they were coming out, and I was interviewing these people. And I said, "What did you see?" "Oh, I saw this 10-foot guy. He looked like Michael Phelps. He was all muscular and he was very stern looking and stuff like that." And then the guy, the Navy guy, said, you were in there? You saw it?" "Yeah." He said, "I can't believe it. There was an extraterrestrial. I've never seen a UFO. Nothing as an extraterrestrial." And the second year, everybody described the being as the same being. His name was Antarel. But the second year, he was a hologram, and you could see through him. You could see the trees behind him. And so I said, "So you saw him?" "Yeah, he was a hologram, right?" And he said, "What do you mean a hologram?" I said, "Well, yeah, he was a hologram." No, he wasn't. I said, yeah, that's what everybody else says. He said, Grant, look, let me tell you what. I was close enough. I could see the lines in his face. It was not a hologram. He was flesh and blood. And so it was this idea, and he was in the same thing. And that's the whole thing is we're part of the thing. We want to believe there's an out there that's influencing us, and it's attacking us, and it's doing stuff to us. And we got to realize we're part of what's actually going on. It may actually be us that is creating this whole thing, because that's what they say when they fly the craft. They say, go within yourself. When you can imagine it, then we will go there. And it's the same with remote viewing. When you get remote viewers, you say, okay, here's the target 453-709, and the person says, okay, I'm at the target. They don't say, hang on, I'm flying to the target. I'll be there in a minute. They're not going anywhere. They're going within themselves. The same with out-of-body experiences. One of the top guys with out-of-body experiences, you're not going anywhere. You're going within yourself. Or the Sufi expression, you see yourself as a puny form when within you the entire universe is enfolded. And that's the part where the government can't really start disclosing, if they even know that, is this idea that it's not what you think it is. It's way more complex, and we have no clue. That's what kept telling me in the psilocybin experience, is you think you know what's going on. You haven't got a clue what's going on. And Eric Walker, who was one of the top guys, the highest level source anybody ever had, said the same thing to us. He said, you guys assume a lot of stuff, and most of what you assume is wrong. And he laughed. He said, unless you have the mind of Einstein or likewise, you will not get anywhere with this thing. And this is this whole, he was telling us indirectly in Rhymes and Riddles in 1991 already, that this thing is way beyond what you think it is. We want sort of a simple answer. The government just tell us what's going on, tell us where the crafts are and stuff like that. And we don't realize that they may not even know. They may know, yeah, they got bodies and crafts, but beyond that, they haven't got a clue. They just realize this is really, really complex. And that's when you hear guys like Jim Semivan say, there does not appear to be any out there. And this guy got the briefing. So it's like, what is he talking about? What is he referring to here?
Yeah, the main portal's inside. You can go anywhere. You know,
Yeah.
That's people spend their whole lives looking up, or what I think one of the first interviews I did with you, like I told you what ayahuasca told me when I asked like when contact will be made is when we learn how to look in the mirror.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that came straight from ayahuasca. Like we're looking up, and we need to look within, because that's we're not from this planet.
Yeah, and that's where we make the mistake. Is we there's a panel taking place on this ship that I'm going to be on, and there's 24 speakers, and there's about 5 disclosure panels, and not one of them has a woman on, even though there's 10 of the 24 speakers are women. And that's because the UFO community, I call the experiencers the illegal immigrants of the UFO world. Nobody wants, if you look at it, nobody wants to talk to experiencers. It's like, do not. We will get the cross and the nails. If you start talking about New Age and talking to aliens and stuff, we don't want that. We just want the technology. And I call it the boys and their toys. The panels are men, and we want technology. We just give us the technology, give us the toys, give us the free energy, all this kind of stuff, and do not talk about spiritual stuff. And to me, in the end, I'm pretty convinced that this is all going to turn out to be a very spiritual thing. It's really got nothing to do with physical stuff. We have a physical world, but it all goes back to why are we here, what's really going on, and that's something that really people don't want, because they really can't cash it in. They want to make money. It's all about, technology and bigger weapons and, more powerful AR-15 rifles and, cheaper gas and all this kind of stuff. And I call it the boys and their toys club. And when it comes to the women who are talking to the experiencers, nobody wants them to come out. And if you take a look at the major documentaries that are done in the UFO world, you'll see no experiencers, and they've been confronted, and they'll say, we can't go there. No, because we're not going to do the experiencer. We're not going to do that spiritual aspect, New Age aspect. We just want to stick with scientific facts. And they have all these anecdotal stories about, pilots seeing this. And so if you're a pilot and drop bombs on people, then your story is important. But if you're a woman who had an experience where you talked to God or talked to some, higher being or whatever, and was told how the world works, shut up. We don't want to hear that. We just give us the technology. And I don't think they have the technology. I think that's removed from them, that they're playing the game, that they have this stuff all understood. And in fact, they understand this consciousness aspect, but that's what they told Tom DeLonge, the one, I think the head scientist, said. He said, okay, we'll help you, but just remember, what you may find down the road when you get there is a bunch of guys standing in suits in the dark, standing around an elephant. I don't think they know what people think they know. And then the idea is, if they had the technology, why are we doing so bad in the Ukrainian war? Why are the Russians using golf carts to attack the front with golf carts? I mean, if we have all this technology, I don't think we really have it. I think that's all bravado by people that are talking.
It's actually kind of frustrating. So that's really frustrating. On the one hand, we know that they have crashed craft. I think it's been stated by many whistleblowers and people. I mean, again, Grush testified in front of Congress. But on the other hand, just like Bob Lazarus, we have no idea how these things work. You mentioned about how they could all be different and have a different fuel source and a different way to fly them. We have absolutely no idea, because if we did, Russia would be leveled, China would be I mean, who knows? Maybe not leveled, but at the very least, there would be a god of this world, and they'd be human, because they'd have the power that no one else has on this planet. You'd think that Russia, if they had that tech, they wouldn't use it. I just can't imagine. I mean, I don't know. It just seems ridiculous to believe that.
I think it's a different type of warfare. But let me ask you this, Grant. So in saying that, and thinking about like how we all see them differently, or do you think that we're creating that being, like, since as a part of, well, okay, so I saw the UFO first far before, and I was 1000% convinced that they existed. So then I'm like, the different beings that I've come in contact with, I'm wondering if that's a projection that, because he's saying, no, these aren't ET, these aren't from, or what we think they are. They've been here.
They are etheric beings. That's what Dawes said. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the Creator. And she said, well, why do you come as this gray thing? And he said, well, it's much more functional than a human body. We do it because it's much more functional to come. And she says, well, you're so scary. And he said, what, you think I look ugly? And she said, well, you scare me every time you cut my memory off, and every time you come, you scare the living daylights out of me, and I have to go through this thing again. And he said, Sherry, do you ever look in the mirror? And she goes, no, why? He said, we got those big teeth, Sherry. When you smile, we think you're gonna eat it. and even the crash saucers, I think of crash saucers, you start seeing it different, because we believe there's this out there. And I say, this makes no sense. That you got to go to the paranormal thing, that when it makes no sense, you got to stop and think, what is really going on here? So I say, so they come 1,000 light years across the galaxy and then they crash?
Yeah.
Come on. And you asked Bob Bigelow. Bob Bigelow was asked, what about the crashes? Do you believe Roswell? He said, yeah, I think Roswell was real. He said, but China has a crash. Russia has a crash. They have a crash in South America. I think they're seeding them. And that's what you see. Tim Taylor, the NASA guy, says it's the gifting field. And that's when I actually went to Hal Puthoff. They're dropping the metal, and everybody gets all excited. Oh, look at this metal. We're going to build a flying saucer and stuff like that. And I go, what? So it came across the galaxy, and then little pieces started falling off the thing. They're dropping it on purpose.
Yeah,
man.
that's ridiculous.
You're right. Especially since they don't have the, they're pretty simple, like in terms of they don't have all the propulsion systems and things like that we do on our aircrafts. But
or you get the thing, if you go back to the 1897 crash in Aurora, Texas, go back and read the actual article. It says the UFO hit this windmill. It was moving between 8 and 10 miles an hour. Like today, that's like crazy, man. Or it's like, so you talk about the Roswell thing. You said, well, it's Roswell. There was this memory metal, and you could take our sledgehammer and you couldn't dent it with a sledgehammer, and it would, you couldn't burn it, you couldn't cut it, you couldn't do whatever. But it hits the ground and it crashes like a wine glass dropped off the Empire State Building. It doesn't make any sense. You start looking and you go like, what's really going on here? And that's what it comes down to, is this is all staged. A lot of this stuff is staged. And he went to Hal Puthoff and said, Hal, this has got to be apportations. They're dropping this stuff on purpose. Because Hal Puthoff had the experience in 1982. He had Uri Geller in the SRI lab in San Francisco, and they were having lunch, and Uri Geller was eating ice cream, and suddenly he cuts his lip. And he pulls this thing out, and Edgar Mitchell is sitting there with Hal Puthoff, and he goes, that's my flight pin. I lost that in Houston 2 years ago. How'd you get my flight pin? So he gives it to Edgar Mitchell. They go back to the lab, and they're in the lab, and they're sitting there, and Uri Geller is in the next room. So you can't really blame Uri Geller for this. He's in the next room, and all of a sudden, dink! They look behind them, and the back half of the flight pin is on the floor. And so I said to Hal, apportations. They're dropping this stuff. This is apportation. And Hal was he's always very short in, with his response. He said, we'll study the metal one step at a time. So he didn't deny this is apportations. They're dropping this stuff on purpose. And everybody gets all excited, and they think we're going to build flying saucers and stuff like that. And it's like, come on, it's very obvious. And no two pieces of metal are the same. No two crafts are the same. And I even the crafts, when Lukatsky said no two UFO sightings are the same, I go, that's what it is. Because I remember when I had the experience with the guy, the Air Force guy was flying, he put his hands on a panel. Then I got a friend out of Boulder who Drew may know, Candace Powers, and I said, you flew the craft too? And she said, yeah. I said, well, tell me how you flew the craft. And she said, well, I don't know. It's like a dream. I said, everything's just a dream. Just tell me how the flew craft. He said, well, I was sitting there and there was this ball and I had my hands over top of this ball. I wasn't touching the ball, but I moved my hand over top of this ball and I could fly the craft. And I'm going, well, where's the panel? Why didn't you touch a panel? And so when this whole thing about the crafts all being different, then I'm going, hey, and I'll go back and check the 36 people. Nobody touched the same thing. One person had a joy switch. One person sat and put their fingers in the end of a chair. One pushed a button. One put their hands on a panel. One put their hand on a panel on the wall. No two people did touch. It was all the same thing. You are in the craft. The craft is conscious. The craft is organic. It's alive. When you touch the craft, you become one with the craft. Whatever you think is what the craft does, and you can go from here to the other side of the universe instantaneously. But nobody did the same thing. It's almost like the same thing with the propulsion systems or all this other stuff. They're all individual systems. There is no. We're looking for this pattern, and there is no pattern. The pattern is it's all individual, and that you are part of the thing. So everybody has these different experiences, and you start looking at it completely different in terms of changing it from we are part of it and it's a verb and we're part of what's happening and we came here to do this and we're part of the plan. We planned all this kind of stuff, as opposed to the idea of the victim, that there's these evil aliens and we're victims and they're taking these people against their will and all this sort of stuff. And if you look at the reincarnation thing, it's like the same thing with near-death experiencers, or if the people that are experiencers have non-human intelligence. 37% of those people say they've had a near-death experience. And you go, hey, so is that random that you got abducted by an alien and then you also had a near-death experience? And you start to realize none of this is random. We planned this. You have a near-death experience to learn something. It's not a random event.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Do you think it's at that point to change our direction? Like it's our time to, because I know, like I said, after I saw that craft, I started reading. I totally shifted. I could see like within 6 months, I didn't even recognize myself. My whole course of life had changed at that point.
Yeah. It's amazing how they can change you. Whereas we have, like, the Americans have 800 bases around the world. And what have they changed in any country? Nothing. We were using the left brain thing where we go in there and tell them how to live their lives. And the way they're doing it, it gets you down the rabbit hole. And people will, I mean, because I've been in this 50 years, and people will say, oh, this guy quit. He's had it. He's got totally frustrated. He's leaving or whatever. And go, yeah, okay, whatever. Don't worry about it. He'll be back. Nobody.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
Oh, you mean we have to do this all over
I
again?
feel
Greg?
attacked.
Oh,
I literally
please, no.
walked away from this whole thing months ago. Now I'm like, I gotta go back. I gotta come back to this topic. I can't stop talking about it and thinking about it all day long and stuff like that. It is compelling, if you will. It draws you in.
Yeah, it does. I swore off it for a period of time too, and I just got sucked right back in. And I'm like,
It's almost like whatever
no.
this intelligence is, it may have done this on 1,000 planets before. So that's why I make this joke. I said, well, so where did the 1890 aliens go? Where did the contactees from the 1950s go? They were here and then they disappeared. Where did the Foo Fighters were only for a year? Where did the Foo Fighters go? Where did the green fireballs go? And it's like there's another planet 100 years before us. And right now they're flying the wooden ships. Then they're going to bring in the Foo Fighters. Then they're going to bring in the green fireballs. Then they're going to bring in the Damsky crafts. And they've done it before. They know exactly. And that's what they told me at one point. I got really frustrated. I can't take this anymore. It's just all this sort of stuff. And this is going to be the fourth book. I've written 3 books on disclosure. The fourth book is called Beyond Managing Magics, because they're dealing with magic. It's not UFOs. It's this whole paranormal stuff. And it's called Beyond Managing Magic, Landing the Plane. So at one point, I'm very frustrated and whatever. And I got this clear as day in my head. And it said, what are you getting so worried about? Don't worry. Don't worry. We know how to land the plane. And I went, oh, I know what that means. And that's the whole thing. They know how to land the plane. They know what they're doing. Just live with it, go along. And that's one of the things in one of my new books is this thing that's really bizarre phenomena that I came across when I first heard it. I thought, come on, there's no way. And that was my friend. He's a stock trader in LA. and his father dies, and it's very traumatic. You always have this trauma event. The trauma is what opens you up. And he has this event, his father dies, and he starts going into float tanks. He's so stressed out, he's going into float tanks, and he gets addicted to these float tanks, and suddenly he starts getting these messages in the float tank. Someone's talking to him in the float tank, and then he has a kind of encounter with his father, and he goes to get the corporation papers from his father's place, and suddenly his father's talking to him in the house. He's going, "What are you doing?" And it's like, and there's just bizarre story that I put in Contact Modalities. Anyway, he tells me the story. He says, "I'm in the float tank," and then suddenly I get this impression. He said, "I told everything's perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be." And I go, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, there's a woman had a near-death experience. She said the same thing." So I got her. Her name is Beverly. Beverly's her first name. I can't remember. She had an experience on a motorcycle 50 years ago, face first into the concrete in LA and on Sunset Boulevard off a motorcycle. And she had the same thing where she gets this experience where she is told everything's perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And I'm going, that doesn't make. And then I got another woman who did QHHT, and she was reading a book. She was kind of depressed reading this book. And this came to her. And it came with absolute certainty. It's like a UFO experience. It comes with absolute certainty. And then I started gathering these together, and now I'm going to do an entire chapter on all these people that have had these experiences through psychedelics and stuff, where they're told everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be, everything's perfect, don't worry about it. And the big one was, if you've read the book Hunt for Zero Point, which is the big UFO tech book where Nick Cook talks about all the technology he believes the U.S. government has developed, and secret Air Force technology and stuff like that. His wife has it. His wife has a shared near-death experience. Her mother's dying, and she's sitting there, and she's holding her mother's hand, and Nick Cook is sitting in the room, and all of a sudden the mother dies, and the wife gets up and walks out and walks past him and says, "Everything's perfect." And she goes walking out of the room, and Nick Cook goes, "What are you talking about?" He says, he goes racing after her. He says, "What do you mean everything's perfect? Your mother just died. Like, how could everything be perfect?" And she said, "Weren't you there?" And he said, "Wasn't I where?"
Yeah.
"Well, weren't you there?" "I was in that field. I was in the field, and I knew the answer to everything in the universe, and everything is exactly perfect. That's what they told me." And then he goes, "Wow." And now he's running Bigelow's consciousness studies thing. But you have these people who've had this experience where everything is absolutely perfect. Even the guy who did this psilocybin thing at Johns Hopkins University, he works with people who are dying, and then once you do the 5 grams of psilocybin, then you're content to die. You realize how it works and stuff like that. And he did this, and then suddenly he gets a diagnosis of 4th stage colon cancer, and he's only got a couple months to live. So of course they ask him in the interview, Roland Griffith is his name. So Dr. Griffith, did you do psilocybin? Did you do the psilocybin once you found out you only had a couple months to live? And he said, "Well, no, I really didn't do psilocybin." And he said, "I did LSD." And then he said, "So what happened?" He said, "Well, I was talking to the cancer, and I said, is that it? Am I going to die?" And the cancer said, "Yeah, you're going to die." And he said, "No hope? No, everything's okay. Don't worry about it. You're going to die. But everything's fine." And he says, "Well, you wanted me to carry a message? That was my deal." And he said, yeah, you carry a message." He said, "Well, if you left me live a couple more years, I could deliver more message." And they go, "No, everything's okay. Don't worry about it." And a couple of months later, he's dead. And so you got to cross the spectrum. And if that's true, it's like everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Everything's happening. So it's just sit that back and relax. And that's what they told me. That was this whole thing. Don't worry. And it was clear as day. It was, don't worry. We know how to land the plane. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
I would
okay.
say learn to ride the wave, because it really is. But I was going to say, hey, if you're looking for somebody to partner up and do research, Drew's got everything that you need and more. Just pointing that out.
I work with organic bufo, so I don't work with synthetic. But
Oh, is that
where I
right?
get my bufo from is a sanctuary down in Mexico. So it's the only sanctuary in the entire world that's actually recognized by a federal government. So it's sanctioned by the Mexican government. And
So whereabouts in Colorado? Are you close to Boulder? Because I'm going to be in Boulder next year.
no, I'm closer to Taos actually.
Okay.
So I'm down in the San Luis Valley by close to Crestone and Great Sand Dunes and Mount Blanca and all that stuff.
Okay.
But my first book, man, published in 2020, I'm perfect and so are you. And
there you go.
That's the divine nature of creation is you have to get your mind wrapped around it. And the way it was described to me is everything is always perfect. You need to change your perception. Your perception is what's off. And once you align with that perfection, that divinity, your experience like heaven on what most would consider heaven on earth. Things will manifest in front of you. Things will pop up that you're never imagined, opportunities, and you just keep building and building. And I'm experiencing that right now. Like that reality. I'm experiencing that right now.
Yeah. And when you
That's
die,
amazing.
then you go, you have to have absolute knowledge, and you go, wow, that was an exciting time. It's like you suddenly realize like it was just a dream. It was just, something you did. And it's like, wow, that was something. Because I remind people, you die 1,000 times, you think it's really bad, but you're going to die all different ways. And people can't believe that you could actually agree to die, in a certain way. And that when you're on the other side, you have to do things for certain reasons. And those things are not bad. It's all experience.
Yeah. So
can,
Drew, how far are you? I have to ask, how far are you then from Boulder?
Oh, probably about 3 hours. So I'm 3 hours from about 3.5 hours from the airport in Denver. So probably in between 3.5 hours, somewhere around there. So
Yeah.
But you going to be at Gaia?
No, I'm going to be doing an event with Britt Elders at what's Paula Harris's place there? It's not Boulder. It's
Crestone.
It could be
Crestone.
Yeah. Next May. So I'll be around.
So you'll be an hour away then. So that I used to live in
I'll link up with
Crestone.
you. I'll make it come in early, and we'll meet up, and we'll do some stuff.
Yeah, dude, I miss you, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, and I always called Colorado,
awesome.
like when I went to Denver, I always called it Consciousness Colorado, because it was like, they're recycling food, and they're everybody's doing the Course in Miracles. There's 5 different sessions, and I was with a girl there, and every day we'd go to a different group that was doing the miracle course and stuff like that. And it was just a totally different place. Everybody's riding a bicycle, and it's like just a completely different world than the rest of the country.
Yeah, we legalized mushrooms and DMT at the beginning of the year, and mescaline, not peyote, but mescaline. So yeah, it's exciting times here.
Yeah, and you're on the leading edge. That's where I always remind people, is if you realize what's actually going on, you're getting to play in the Super Bowl. I mean, what more could you ask for than to be on the leading edge of reality and stuff? Most people live lives of quiet desperation, looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. We didn't get that. We got to play in the Super Bowl. We got the biggest thing. We don't take it. We take it for granted and just complain about this is wrong, that's wrong, whatever. And you get sucked into the illusion all the time because it's so strong as to what's going on, and it's hard to break out. And that's why it's important when we have sessions like this. You raise your vibration up, and we sort of realize, and by tomorrow afternoon we'll sort of be back in the illusion and forget a lot of that kind of stuff. But that's the part of it, is you go through a river of forgetfulness to forget, because otherwise you're not going to learn anything unless you learn it on your own.
I'm so glad you went down the psychedelic rabbit hole, man. I remember us talking back in 2019, our first conversations, and how intrigued you were with it all and everything. I'm just glad that, my main mission is sharing my story, is having people experience whatever it is, whether it be psychedelics or anything, not outside of psychedelics, just experience it for themselves. So I'm glad you got to see what I was talking about a little more. So I'm really glad.
I appreciate it. I mean, everything links up when you get it, all the pieces fit together. It's to get the ego out of the way and sit there and listen to what people are saying, because people aren't making stuff up, and people are. That's why I try to. That's my mission, because when I first saw the UFO, I wanted to find people somebody had to know what was going on. And in the end, I realized it wasn't the government, it wasn't that kind of stuff. It was people who are channeling, people who are having psychedelic experiences. There are people who have been in the field. And why would you take it off the table? Why would you not listen to these people? They're picking up stuff. And when you're in the field, you're not going to get garbage, because in the ego is going to make up stuff, and nothing is really accurate and stuff like that. When you get in the field, the answers are pure. They're actually there. And it's just the ability to bring the material back. Everything is there, and you have this understanding, and that's where you got to go. And that's why I'm so upset about the experiences being cut out of the UFO world, is everybody's chasing the wrong thing. They're chasing this sort of technology stuff, and they're ignoring what's really actually going on.
Wouldn't it be beneficial if you guys came up with like an inventory to give people like, Drew could administer it. I don't know if you'd be comfortable, but like after they come out, like what they took and then, boom, boom, boom. Did you experience this? Did you experience that? Or I don't know. I just think that this is like a great,
Creating a
because
system,
you're
yeah.
putting all these things, that are unique to the drug. I think that would be like most beneficial to
Well-
know and understand.
You remember a lot of us remember John Yoist. Rest in peace, John. And I hope you hear us and everything. But he produced a documentary a year or two ago. It was Alien Encounters Answers or something like that. But we were in the talks while right before, like when he
Oh,
got
yeah, I remember
diagnosed with
seeing
cancer and
that.
everything.
Yeah.
Me and John and Deb Shakti and a couple other people were in talks about doing another documentary where we would take 8 experiencers that had never experienced psychedelics and interview them beforehand about their abduction experience, administer 2 ayahuasca ceremonies, and then interview them again. And that documentary never came to fruition because cancer stepped in and took John from us. But I know that documentary will happen somewhere somehow, because I think it's important. The connection between Native American practices, ceremonial practices, and star beings is something that goes back way back before anybody that's on this panel or even listening. It goes back way back, and it's a deep connection. And that's so what you're speaking about, Cooley. That's definitely, something I've been thinking about for the past, over 2 years, ever since we started talking about it.
It'd be a good idea. That's what you need to do, and tape it in terms of. I found with my psychedelic experiences, there's no two that were the same. So you have that individuality, but you have these sort of patterns where, like the Cadillac is the 5-methoxy, where you're sort of like that's the ultimate level when you're going back to source type thing, and yet people, I think you probably agree, Drew, that people, it's not exactly the same, the way people describe it, because you have your own individual take on it.
Yeah.
It's different.
I would volunteer for it. I would definitely volunteer for it.
It's different. I think
Next
everybody.
May. Okay, we're going to do it next May. Let's get
Everybody
it
should do it.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Let's
It's
do
on
it
my
and do a
calendar.
C5 that night. I got here in this valley. I got 2 meteor impact craters, and I've been called to do a C5 in one of the impact craters that's by Crestone. I want to do a ceremony with a bunch of people and not be in ceremony during the C5, but do it during the day, like the ceremony during the day, and then have people high vibing during the night and see what we can do.
Yeah, write it out. I'd like to look at it. I'd like to, because that's where you got to go, and that you get curious, and that's where the answers come, is when you can break out of that ego thing and get there. The answers, I believe, are all there, and it's the ability to access the answers.
Yeah.
Just give me a date
5
and I will definitely book a flight in advance, and I would be there for sure. I would definitely. You guys got it together. I think Grant has like a lot of, different, like, you need to actually have data, and, too, like if you need a camera, I can bring my camera out too, but it's like decent to record, or, just something. You got your stuff there too. You could maybe even record like a little interview or something after, but I think that would be awesome.
Yeah,
to know.
It'd be an interesting documentary, even just to put the stuff, because that's what I wanted to do, is record myself as I come out, not so much taking it, but when coming out, they wanted to do this thing where they integrate you and stuff like that, and I was like, no, I'd like to try to explain, because I know with the other stuff with the psilocybin that if you don't write it down right away, it's like a dream. It starts to fade, and so.
No, I had normally, I don't let anyone else do this for any other ceremonies, but with 5-MeO, I will let people videotape the whole thing, like from start to finish, because sometimes it works so fast. It may be right after you exhale, you might start talking in tongues or whatever. Like I've seen all types of things. So, and you're not coherent. So when you come back, lots of times you don't remember what happened or anything like that. So, but the recording does really help. And I will allow people to record it. I got, you know, a tripod, so that's for cell phones and stuff that we use. And
There
Well,
you
if you
go.
were writing up a study, I could help you do that. Like that way, you know, maybe if you have a group or throw it out there, because I know a lot of experiencers, especially myself, you know, I've been like, just, it hasn't worked out that I made it down there yet, but I'm like waiting on the opportunity. So
yeah,
I didn't, you
no,
know, that would
it's
be awesome if you, yeah. And the more I just, yeah, if Grant, if you know anybody too, but yeah, if you have dates, as soon as you have dates, you guys let me know and I'm there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's where we got to go, and eventually, you know, we'll get there. And it may be that we had to have this meeting to plan it, that we had made arrangements that this is what we're going to do, and it just comes together tonight. And when the time is right, everything happens. You have the synchronicities, and this may be a
yeah.
Right.
synchronicity that we need to follow.
Yeah,
So
because I just happened to hop in chat and notice Drew, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know. So yeah, it was just it's how it all happened. The Marquise is like getting him out of link, so it was that was cool because it I thought that you guys would have an interesting intake on it, and that you know I know Drew and I know a lot of what he's been through, so I know that his backing on things is very similar. So I thought it'd be very beneficial.
No,
So
I
I'm
miss
glad.
Grant. Grant was out of this whole community, all the people I know in this community, I've known Grant the longest. Like I started once I started having my experience and everything, and I got told to share, I started listening to podcasts and then reaching out, and Grant took a chance on some guy that sent him an email, you know, and
Yeah.
here we are a couple years later, pretty good friends, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's the idea that things will evolve, and eventually we get to the other end, and it's the enjoy the experience. And I just sort of fascinated, even though I'm not really that keen on doing cut stuff like this, but it's like, wow, you know, if I could get some sort of answer, it's just like, why would you not? Why would you not take that move to go there? It's like, because to me, it's always curiosity. It's like the way I look at it, it's like a chessboard. When I'm watching the stuff, and people will play chess and they'll move their pieces, whatever. And to me, it's like as soon as the guy moves a piece, you do not do nothing until you know why did he move that piece? What's the guy up to? And it's this sort of this exploration. So to me, it's sort of this
yeah.
game of putting the pieces together. And I think that's what I've come to think my role is. In fact, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I think my role now is to get across to people, same as Drew, is that the world is much more complex than you think it is. It's not very simple. That the more you look at it, the more complex the world gets, the more complex it gets, the more complex it gets, and that we're just gradually unraveling this thing. And this is part of our duty to do this, to move the ball down the field and to help consciousness rise so that other people, because you look at psychedelics even 20 years ago, I mean, you would never talk openly about psychedelics like we do now. I mean, the world is changing. People don't realize that consciousness is rising. We're in a different world than we were 20 or 30 years ago, even 10 years ago. Even 10 years ago,
oh yeah,
I mean, consciousness, you wouldn't
easy.
talk about consciousness in 2012. And I said, I mean, when I had my consciousness experience in 2012, I couldn't have spelled consciousness. I could have cared less. And it was like, so things are moving along. We just don't realize it because it's sort of, we think it's moving very slowly, but we are advancing, we are evolving, and we are part of a game where we are moving the ball down the field.
All right, guys, we got to go to our last break. Grant, do you have a little bit more time for us to
Yeah,
ask you a few
sure.
more questions? Okay, cool. Drew, you're going to stay with us?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to go on our last break for the night, and then we will be right back. Polly, it is good to see you in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah,
Polly, thank you.
yeah, we love you. We
I was
love you.
worried about her. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll be right back. Hang tight, everyone.
As the night falls and the stars align, Coley Marquis Show takes us on a ride through the cosmos, the unknown, where mysteries of the universe are shown. questions arise, curiosity grows. Are we alone? Only time knows. UFOs, aliens, paranormal sights. Experts share their knowledge under the lights. Did the government recover a crashed UFO? Or alien bodies hidden, where do they go? Sean Mack's alien agenda. Is it right? Will the truth finally come to light? Secrets of the universe unfold in a facility where the truth's been told. Conspiracies and cover-ups entwine. As we search for answers, will we find in the shadows the truth awaits? UFOs, aliens, paranormal sights. Experts share their knowledge under the lights. Did the government recover a crashed UFO? Or alien bodies hidden, where do they go? Sean Mack's alien agenda. Is it right? Will the truth finally come to light? Secrets of the universe unfold in a facility where the truth's been told. Conspiracies and cover-ups entwine. As we search for answers, will we find in the shadows the truth awaits? In the shadows the truth awaits. UFOs, aliens, paranormal sights. Experts share their knowledge under the lights. Did the government recover a crashed UFO? Or alien bodies hidden, where do they go? Sean Mack's alien agenda. Is it right? Will the truth finally come to light?
Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so we are back. Give me 1 second while I bring in our guests to the conversation here. Guys, can you hear me? I want to see if everybody can unmute themselves. I'm sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome, great. You with
Yo,
us?
yo, yo.
Yo, what's up, Drew, my guy? Sorry. Oh, I'm pressing buttons here, yo. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Cooley and Marquis Show. We have with us Grant Kramer and Drew talking about psychedelics, the paranormal phenomena that the UFO phenomena kind of blends in. When I think about this, by the way, I think this is why I don't think the paranormal and the UFO phenomena and all, I don't think it's separate. I think it's all part of kind of maybe a different expression of the same thing, to be totally honest. I mean, you're talking about things that involve consciousness, meditation, psychedelics, UFO phenomena, alien encounters or non-human intelligence, whatever you want to call it, whatever. Seeing all these different beings, it just seems like it all blends together to me. So let's continue this conversation. I know that people in the chat have questions. Chat, if you have questions, please post them in all caps. I also want to say that we're going to be moving to StreamYard. So next week or next show, I'll be able to pin a bunch of different comments so we can save them and kind of go through them without having to scroll through the whole. Right now I'm scrolling through the whole thing to see if there's any. So I apologize for that. But if there are comments or questions, put them in all caps. Scott, bitchin' is not a question, but it is a comment. So even though it's in all caps. So please, guys, put your questions in all caps, everyone. And again, Paulie, it's great to see you in the chat. So now I had to ask you again. I want to know what your perspective. I kind of get an idea of what your perspective is, and I'll step back and let you guys kind of have, because you had a great conversation before the show, before the break there. But I really want to know something. You mentioned somewhat of your perspective that the phenomena is essentially kind of like a wake-up call for the consciousness of humanity. Correct me if I misquote you or misrepresent what you think. And that all these different things that people are seeing, they're not necessarily what they're seeing, they're representations of something else. All of which, again, is part of that purpose of awakening our consciousness to there being something more. I will admit, I am frustrated by that idea. Not because I don't think it's true, but because I feel like if that is true, which, you know, I'm open to it, there's a lot of suffering in this world. So much suffering. I mean, you went through the stages where you're seeing the suffering of others, some of which made you feel hopeless, like you couldn't do anything to help them at the time, at least. And I just feel like the amount of suffering that's in this world, the idea that we chose this, some of us, the idea that these beings have the ability to wake us up, yet we're still experiencing a great amount of suffering. And humanity has always experienced so much suffering. In my opinion, it is one of the biggest detractors from people who don't want to look at the phenomena as anything more, like, oh, there's some spiritual purpose. Just like it's a detractor for people to believe that there is a God that loves us. Why would there be some intelligence that has the ability to essentially change it all, that would allow there to be so much suffering, as if this is some kind of a game, like a cosmic joke? Like, hey, listen, I know that there's people in, I'm not going to mention any locations in case there's anybody sensitive in the chat, but I know there are people that are being, slaughtered in this location of the world, and these people are slaughtering these people in this part of the world, and these villages are slaughtering these villages. But by the way, it's all just a game, and I'm just trying to, show you guys something cool. That is utterly frustrating to me, and I'd like for you to speak to that. Because Michael Carter always tells me, Michael Carter has been, kind of getting me to see things differently forever, and I haven't gotten there yet. So maybe you guys can help me out here. Grant, please.
Okay, you got American mentality. We want the good stuff. Just give us the good stuff. Don't give us the bad stuff. And basically what happens is when you got the good stuff, you don't learn anything. My expression is, all that's considered to be evil in the modern world is created by one thing and one thing only: the mistaken belief in separation. We have free will. Anything that has pain and suffering is going to be separation. It's going to be me versus you. And when you're in the spirit world, you see everything as experience. So you come in, and they say this thing in the spirit world, that the longest line is for the handicapped people. And you'd go, why would you come in to be handicapped? Because you see things in a totally different light. The way we see it is, it's all about getting stuff. It's about, we want even spiritual stuff. And you have the UFO. In the old days, we have the rich people would go and have seances, talk to dead people, good for entertainment. Now we do entertainment as CE5s. We need some entertainment. We got the 2 houses and the 5 cars, and all our kids have been through college, and now we need some more stuff. We need some spiritual stuff to believe that we're just going to be as privileged in the next world as we are in this world. And if you start looking at the world, you're going to realize that everybody gets to be in the cage, everybody gets to be a refugee, everybody gets to suffer, and that when you take a look at the people that are suffering in other parts of the world, you think, well, they're terrible. I'm happy they're suffering, and it's exactly the opposite. The people who are the poorest, it doesn't mean they're suffering. They're actually in a pretty good shape. They don't realize what they don't have, and they're in more stable mental state than we are. Basically, it comes down to this idea. The key thing is this separation versus oneness. It's all one thing, and when you start with separation, you start getting trauma. You start getting this sort of thing, and that's how you learn your lesson. So if you have God, and God comes along and we're having a movie, and the movie you might want to have is that, I love you and I love my kid and I love my wife and I love this, I love that. And God walks into the movie theater and he goes, oh, this is pretty boring, man. And he goes next week to watch Star Wars, and it's like up and down, and and that's why we learn our lessons. It's this duality thing of having free will, because it's all a game. It's all when we get on the other side, everything's perfect, everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be, and we chose to come into this world of separation, and that's how we learn our lesson. Or even the trauma thing, when I do the contact modalities, and I say, you take a look at contact modalities, you take a look at how many women are mediums who had childhood sex abuse, and so I would say that they agreed to this. You need something to open you up in terms of having this stuff. Why would you choose to have a near-death experience? Why would you choose to go through the front windshield of a car and stuff? And we don't understand this, that these are learning experiences, and you learn more from the stuff that happens bad to you than the stuff that happens good. When the stuff is happening good, you say, oh, I'm so smart, I got it all figured out. And you don't learn anything. It's the bad stuff that teaches you the lessons. So the duality is part of the lessons, and people on the other side will know that they're going to go through these experiences, or even the beings, where I say to them, why does a being come into your room and go, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up? Why do they wake you up? And then you go, oh my God, an alien, look at the alien. And they dissociate. And that's what they want. They want you to dissociate. And they go, okay, he's ready to go. And what they're trying to do is shut the ego down. And when the ego gets crushed, when you go through the front windshield of a car, your ego is shut down. And that's what they want. They want the ego to shut down. And then you go into the field. As long as your ego is in charge and is gathering toys and possessions and stuff like this, and is in control, and is everybody else, who cares who's suffering or whatever, nothing moves. But as soon as you have that trauma thing, separation, ego dissolution, that's when you make the move. So pain is part. I always say to my son, pain, but God created pain for a reason. If you didn't have pain, you'd walk around with a broken leg, you'd walk around with cancer, you wouldn't go to the doctor, you wouldn't know all these things. Everything has a reason. And if you do the Michael Newton thing, the 7,000 people, life between lives, that's basically what you get, is people are making these plans of this and that and learning these lessons. And I died this time, and then you saved me that time. And it's all these things that would make no sense to us. But we're into this world, the American thing, give us everything and give it to us yesterday.
Give it to us yesterday. There's another. Do you think that we experience the same kind of suffering in other realms? Like, for example, if when we die, we go to this other place. Do you think that we go to a place where there is continued suffering and upheaval and these, this roller coaster of up and down, but in a different way, maybe in a lesser or more form?
I say that God did not create the heaven and the earth. God created the sparks of the divine, and we are the ones creating the heaven and the earth. It's all made out of consciousness. So when you leave this world, we always want to be the victim thing. Oh, I get put in hell. You put yourself, you create whatever you want. And I'm starting to think that there is no real one place where you go after. You go wherever you believe you're going to go. You create that. You're creating the afterlife the same as you're creating this life. You're creating everything. It's all made out of consciousness. So you'll get things where Michael Newton will talk about all these people in the spirit world learning lessons and stuff. And then you get this Castle. I can't remember his name. He's a Dominican priest who has these dreams where people come to him in dreams. He had 500 people come to him in dreams who died very traumatically by suicide or horrific accidents and stuff like that. And they're in this purgatory type world, and they're stuck in this purgatory world where he goes to them and he channels them with prayer partners, and he gets them out of there. And then you see that's a different type of world. And then you go to the people who are doing the what do they call it, relay channeling. Back when they did the seance things, where these people say, oh, we're in the spirit world and our children are growing up with us. We're in there's no reincarnation. We're in the spirit world. And I think it's basically you create whatever you want. So that's the whole thing. When you talk to people in the world, the people who are in hell are the people who have cut themselves off. It's the same thing. It's you're either one with God or you cut yourself off. And the more you cut yourself off, the more deep your terrible experience is. And that's what happens in psychedelics. When the ego is not shut down, when the ego is trying to hang on during a psychedelic experience, as I experienced, it's like, oh my God, I was in hell. It was like unbelievable. And once I surrendered, it was like, boom, you're out of it. And so you're creating whatever you find yourself after you die. I think you're putting yourself in that position. You're creating that. There's no God that's forcing you to go to hell or heaven, or you're not a victim. You are creating everything.
Reminds me of that Tom Cruise movie, you know, where he he ends, he's in a car with this girl, and
Are you talking about the butterfly effect or the
no,
vanilla?
no.
It's a Blue
Vanilla.
Sky, I think.
Is it Blue Sky or Vanilla Sky or White Sky? So
Yeah, Vanilla,
Vanilla
Sky.
Sky.
That's it.
Yeah.
Vanilla Sky.
Where-
That was the worst movie I've seen.
if you don't know, it's wild. He's kind of a a ladies' man, and he this one girl he has a relationship with, and doesn't turn out well. But it's about him dying and what happens afterwards, and kind of like how he created the situation, and it's essentially just him being told this is what you have created for yourself after he dies. So that's kind of terrifying.
And we may be the people that are judging ourselves. There's nobody judging us. Like we are, like Michael Newton will talk about this. You go in front of the panel of 3 to 12 people, and they only ask you one question: how did it work out? Because you planned it. People don't realize that you planned it, and you can't bring up Hillary Clinton, the mother-in-law, the dog ate the homework, all this kind of stuff. Because they're going to go time out, time out. It's not about you. This is about what. It is not about anybody else. This is about you. You went through this role. You played the thing, and everybody says the same thing. I could have done better. I forgot to do this. I wanted to talk to that person. I was going to do this, and I chickened out or whatever. And it's this whole idea that it's primary, and that's where quantum physics is now at the state where they will confirm that consciousness is primary, that consciousness creates matter, and that changes everything. We are the ones that are creating it. And you even go to Michael Newton, he talks about people between lives where he's saying, what are you doing? And the guy says, I'm making a rock. He says, you're making a rock? I'm making a rock out of energy. Well, a rock? Well, I don't know how to do plants yet. And if you go to Mark Sims, who, if you know the story, Mark Sims, this very rich guy, wrote this book. He had this encounter with Tejabbar. He's at a CE5 event with Stephen Greer. And I asked the same thing. He said, I see this light. And I said, anybody else see the light? And he says, I don't think so. I think I'm the only one that saw it. And did you think it saw you? Yeah. And then he's this atheist guy. And then he goes, holy cow, this is for real. And then he goes back to the hotel room, and he goes back and he starts meditating. He's starting doing the CE5 protocol, and this being called Tejabbar shows up, and Tejabbar is in his body for 13 days, and he gives him the whole thing how the universe works. And it's this whole thing about progression, that you start with very simple organisms and you work your way up, and when you get to level 15, you're creating galaxies. There are souls that are actually creating galaxies. And that's exactly the way Michael Newton describes it, this idea that it evolves, and we are at whatever level we're at. And as you get more and more evolved, you create more stuff. And it's all this sort of a game where it gets more complex and more complex, that God cannot see himself. If it's all one thing, if there's no negativity, then God doesn't know who he is. And God is seeing himself by this play thing where you have this duality where, and the universe gets more creative, more dynamic, more knowledgeable, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no end to it.
There's a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, it's a really awesome, I think a very hilarious but very interesting movie about the multiverse. And again, I've been reading this book called Something Deeply Hidden. And it's essentially about, quantum mechanics and quantum physics and so forth, and the ideas behind that. And again, I'm a lay person who just reads books and hears the concepts and understands vaguely some of it. But one of the ideas is that there could be so many different. Every action that you take has an infinite amount of possibilities, and each possibility could have another universe that branches off into that possibility. It kind of leans into it. For example, there is a universe where we're having this very conversation, but I say one word differently, and it changes the entire trajectory of that universe. And you could, again, ad infinitum, every single potential possibility from every single different other potential possibility, the branching universe. The Marvel comics, if you pay attention, the movies especially, they build this giant multiverse theory where all these different possibilities they're present, and they're all happening, and we are just on one of these timelines, one of these universal, paths, so to speak. and somehow all of
Except-
it's connected.
Yeah. Except I would say that it's not a thing that we end up in this world that's doing anything to us. If you believe in that, you can create those universes. You can create the timelines because we're the ones that are creating it. That's why I always differentiate between the verb and the nouns. People have these nouns, and when it comes to nouns, then you become a victim. Like this happened to me, and I'm on this timeline, and I have to do this and I have to do that. We don't have to do anything. I think we're creating it all, and it's all basically made out of consciousness. That there is no physical world. It's just a lower vibrating thing. And you got to remember that you talk about illusion. I mean, you talk about there is no black. There's no red. There's no green. There's no, everything is not solid. And it's this idea that it's all being created in your mind. That your mind is putting this whole thing together through different senses, and that. We assume this world, and it's this Maya thing. It's all made out of this just vibrating soup of quantum potentials and stuff like that. And we are controlling it, and anything's possible. So you can have somebody simple like my mother who believes she's going to heaven. She may actually just be in heaven. She just that's what she believed in, and that's what she creates, and that's where she's going to live. And when she gets to a level where she wants to do something more evolved, and we're doing something different. And so that's why you get this experience where you get different religions where they have different interpretations of how it ends up, or all the UFOs are different. And that's what it comes down to. It's this individuality that we are the ones creating the universe. There's no out there making things, doing things to us.
It could be very frustrating for the common person, because we all have this sense of persistence, right? Like if I get up, and then I'm walking on the ground, and therefore there's gravity, and there's solid objects and so forth. But yeah. On a base level, none of that. Donald Hoffman, it's all an illusion. Our senses have created the illusion of this whole experience here. The true nature of reality could lead us to a level of even technological advancements. He mentioned it once in it, the idea that there was a question that was posed to him about how, who cares if you're kind of essentially you're pontificating about the potentials of all these different universes or whatever, when we have to live this life. But imagine if you could, for example, instead of traveling from here to Andromeda and taking as long as it does at the speed of light, what if you could instantly travel there, because you understand that consciousness is the core of this reality, and you can bypass all the hindrances of this illusion that we're experiencing, and just boom, you're there in a second because of consciousness. And you merge technology and consciousness together, and you get something that you akin to what these UFOs are doing. That's my conjecture, not his.
Yeah,
at that point.
And that's what the sky pilots say. I mean, you go from here to there instantaneously. There is no. That's the whole thing. There may not be any time and space. That's the whole. The 1919 or 2022 Nobel Prize on spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
Where there may not be any time and space. It's all here and now, and you're living all your lives at the same time. Imagine the president standing up and saying that. You're living all your lives at the same time. It's like a deck of cards on top of each other, and you can go into your past and live a past life or a future life, whatever, and there's no time and space, and that's how you can move from here to there. That's what the Mission Rama people would talk about, where they open these Zendras, and you step through and you're on another planet. You take one step through, and the thing's like a quarter of an inch thick, and you go on there. And that's what Ron Pandolfi, one of the high-level guys that I've followed for 20 years, and he talks about the loons, crooks, and worse, that all these people who are trying to get funding from the federal government are just guys who ran out of billionaires to rip off, and now they're trying to rip off the government with these ideas of traveling past the speed of light and all this sort of stuff. And he says his wife's from another planet. His wife came through the portal, and I actually got the only time he was ever caught on film. I got it, and he was furious. Cameron stole this thing. Well, you put it on your wife's YouTube channel, and how could I possibly not take this off the channel? And that's when they ask him, his wife asked him, he says, Footman, that's his code name. Footman, so what do you say? He says, people have always wondered what it's like to go into the next world. The next time John, and he's referring to this John Sillison guy sitting beside him that he went to UCLA with, he said, next time John goes to the desert, a number of us in this room will go into the next world and come back again. I went, wow. And if that's true, and then this guy, he didn't realize I was going to grab it. He was just on a cruise. They were just chatting in a restaurant on a cruise, and he said this. And then you realize this all could be very much for real, that you can walk from here to there, and that if there's no time and space, everything changes. That's this idea where I say with the DMT, where these guys talk about the one guy, he's gone 2,500 years. and he builds his forest on the side of a mountain, and he's gone for 2,500 years. Or the one on the coma, the induced coma, has gone and claimed this happened. This was not an illusion. He was gone for 100,000 years. You got to start wondering, like, how does the world actually work if that's true? I mean, it's just the potentials are endless in terms of what's going on. We're making all these assumptions that there's time, there's space, all this kind of stuff. And in the end, I don't think any of that's going to be true. In fact, I've made this statement numerous times now. I say we've already been through. We learned the world wasn't flat. We learned the sun didn't go around the earth. We realized in 1920, we realized there was more than one galaxy. It wasn't until 1920. In 1911, we didn't know, and before 1911, everything was not solid and stuff like that. And I basically conclude that when you come down to it, everything you see, everything you perceive is going to be wrong. Everything. We're just making all these assumptions, and that's what keeps us going. But we've had so many mistakes, and we don't learn from our mistakes that this is wrong, that's wrong. We're stationary. The world is not rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. It is, and it's moving through the solar system, and it's moving. The solar system is moving through the galaxy, and the galaxy is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour and stuff like that. And we just perceive all this stuff, and everything we perceive is wrong. And that's what keeps us in the physical world and keeps us going. But the phenomena is telling us it's not that. It's more complex. And my experience is the more you look at it, the more complex it gets and the less answers there are.
I have one more question before I give other people a chance. I'm sorry, guys, Coley and Drew. If there was nothing between what you know to be truth or what you believe to be truth and the rest of humanity seeing this truth, if nothing was stopping us from seeing it, your vision, what would the world look like?
Well, I mean, people have had this experience of knowing everything. I was shown it twice. I remember the first time I said it, and I went, it looks so mechanical. Because one thing I had when I had my psychedelic experience, I always was on this thing about where's the unconditional love? Because you always hear about the unconditional. Why don't I experience unconditional love? And then I sort of experienced, but it was a little bit different. It was sort of like, no matter what you do, it's okay. Don't worry, anything that happens. But I remember I saw it twice. And the second time it was like, oh, yeah, it was sort of like, I knew it already. This is this idea that you know everything. And it's like they show it to you and you go, oh yeah, I forgot. And that's the way it was. So I saw everything. I saw how everything worked. I forgot what it was, but I know that I was shown twice. The first time I said, it looks so mechanical. It's like, but that's the whole thing is people have had this experience. Nobody remembers what it is, but people will say that it's sort of like it's perfect. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Everything is working, the way it's supposed to work. Nothing's wrong. Everything's just great, and that's the way people generally describe it. But a lot of people have had that experience of knowing exactly how it works, and that it's everything's alive, everything's conscious, everything's one. I think that'd be the bottom line. That I think Drew would agree that in the psychedelic world, if you had Sting, if you remember Sting did the ayahuasca, he went down to to Brazil, and they said, which one of you would be Sting? And he goes, oh, that'd be me. Oh, we got a special one for you. And he made him drink this huge thing of ayahuasca. And he said he was talking to the shaman. He said, get me out of this. He's like, he wanted to die. He was like, and then the guy's doing all these things and stuff like that. And then he said he realized everything was alive, conscious, and one. And he looked at the little plant coming out of the crack, and he said, that's my brother. And that's this common thing that you'll have in near-death experiences, in ayahuasca and stuff, in this idea that everything is one and everything's conscious, everything's alive, and it's all okay. Drew, maybe you can jump in on this, because you've had the experiences as much as I have in terms of, what's the ultimate meaning of these experiences?
Just to show us, connect us back to one, let us understand, the existential question, like we all have, why are we here? We're here as particles of source, having experiences to expand the experiential knowledge of source, and source is the universe and everything around us. I remember telling you the first interview I did with you, how I come to the title of the book. It was my third ceremony with ayahuasca. I went into that ceremony with the intention. I asked the medicine, why am I here on this planet? It told me I was going to be speaking, translating, sharing my experiences and articulating them just like I'm doing now. And I said, no, you got the wrong person because I was in Iraq. I've done all these things. Every indiscretion I could ever think of was coming to my mind then. And it said, no, everything that you did led you to drink ayahuasca for the first time, to have a spirit, which led you to your spiritual awakening. I drank in 2016 for the first time. Didn't have any spiritual background or anything like that. I just was simply going for some relief from PTSD and was tricked into the spirit world. And, and I was so blown away by it. I'm still talking about it, all these years later. But, I'm perfect and so are you. It's the book, and it's the whole thing is describing everything, pretty much what you've been talking about. It's the oneness. It's hard to imagine, like, I talk a lot about how everything is sacred, and coming up through the years, sitting down with medicine people from around the world, both men and women, working with psychedelics and not, from all these different tribes. One thing that would always say, everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. I would never, but they would never explain it why. Finally, like about 2 years ago, I really, really understood it. Everything we see, whether it be a pen, a phone, a bomb, a gun, a bullet, a flower, anything, anything that we see was in someone's mind at one time. And now it's in the physical, and therefore it's sacred because it originated in the quantum realm. The quantum realm is when you close your eyes, and when you bring out to the physical, that's why everything is sacred. So everything that we see around us, no matter what our perception is, good or bad, to kind of expand on Marquise's question about, why people suffer. What is the biggest lesson that we can go through in the physical form while we're alive? It's grief. Grieving for someone close to us. Some of the biggest lessons is in those experiences. So it could, the title of it and the overall vibe of it could be a negative vibe, but in the background, so many other things happen. If say someone, a child gets hurt, say sexual hurt or anything like that, and then say gets murdered and she's only 2 years old, the question arises. I get the question all the time in interviews. Why? How does that happen? Well, it's the parents of that child went through a lesson that if you go back to Dolores Cannon's findings from QHHT, you'll find that child soul signed up for a short experience, and everyone around that all the lessons that come from that trauma exude on out, and it's designed to wake people up. And we're here. It's just as if our cells, if our cells, like the cells in my body, said, one of them said they were Grant, one of them said they was Marquise, one of them said they were Cooley, one of them said they were Drew, and so on and so forth. But they're still part of Drew. This is the same. This is how the spirits describe it to me, of how we are to source. We are a cell of source, but we took on a name, but we're actually a cell of that same source.
Let me kind of clarify, because I want you guys to think big here. All right, think big. So I study war. Unfortunately, I tend to study a lot of the darker side of humanity. And it kind of gives me a vision of how terrible we can be. But on the other side of that, there's also Doctors Without Borders, right? So there are these doctors that go to active war zones. They don't get paid a lot of money. First of all, they don't get paid for this at all. They go to these active war zones, and they tend to people that wouldn't otherwise have care, usually life-threatening situations. I remember hearing recently a doctor talk about a scenario where he saw, and this is going to be graphic, so trigger warning for those listening. He saw a child, several of them, with a bullet hole to their head and one to their chest, which means that someone had hit them not just once to take them out, but a second time, almost like to make sure that they're gone. And in many other situations where this kind of thing was happening, and I've heard these examples for decades in different places all over the world where there are these wars. I mean, Rwanda, right? I watched the movie Hotel Rwanda, which kind of put the cinematic, vision of what happened there, where they were literally chopping people, dragging families out in their front yard and hacking them with a machete. And the UN essentially just said, hey, anybody who's American, let's get out of here, and left them to do this to each other. Did nothing to stop them. Thousands of bodies, they were driving over the bodies of civilians all over the place. And there are many, again, I see these things. On the one hand, I see, and this is going to give me a moment to kind of reconnect here. On the one hand, I see, to me, when I think about how terrible people can be, the only thing that I think of out of that, the only good, if there is any, to come from that, are the people like the Doctors Without Border, are the people who deliver food while they're literally being slaughtered on the way to deliver the food, and then go back to do it again if they survive. Like, that's what I see. So when I say, what do you think the world will look like? I don't envision for one moment a world where those things will not continue to happen. But I do envision more people who do potentially wake up to these things that you're mentioning, doing those things, risking whatever life this is, whatever we are experiencing here, risking all of it to go and do those things for those in need. Because in my opinion, from my perspective, if you do have these thoughts, this feeling of unity and connection, right? If you have this perspective where you believe that we're all sacred and we're all special and important, then I think that it would compel you, right? To focus your love and your attention and your effort, not just to experiencing what good you can experience, but to make sure that those who can't experience anything but suffering can have something other than just that. Am I off here? I mean,
No, I think you're on. I think you're dead on. But that the good that comes out of that is not just the people delivering food and all that. It's also this conversation right here. Because without that, so we have to look at all aspects, because if we're going on their assumption, just what if, that we're all source, we're all going through this experience to learn and expand this, that, and the other. This is a positive ripple from those moments as well. And this is not the only conversation that is triggered by these moments. So it's hard to, and also, like, from a spiritual aspect, like from the grand scheme of things, if we are energy and we never die, if this keeps going on forever and ever and ever, that those moments don't seem less as impactful than what they are if we're speaking from a 3D physical aspect. Does that make sense?
I think that you mean almost as if you're detached from the visceral.
No, not if you're detached, but if you see the universe as a much larger thing than a 0 to 80 year experience,
Zoom out.
and we turn
zoom
into
out, right?
Zoom out and look at the Earth, look at the Earth from space,
Be a passenger in the moving train.
Yeah, like William Shatner said when he went to did that flight a few years back. What he said when he came back is very similar to what people talk about after a psychedelic experience. Like he's seen the world, he's seen the Earth from an outside perspective, and everything started to make a lot more sense. And that's kind of what psychedelics do, or even when you go into meditation, even without psychedelics, cold plunges, ecstatic breath work, this, that, and the others. There's other ways to get to that point. But when you see it from an outside perspective, then you start understanding other things. We have the chakra system. I think I talked about it when I was on the show with Marquise and Cooley back in the day. That we have a chakra system.
Yeah.
Well, the universe is a chakra system too.
Oh, yeah.
what's the heart chakra of our universe? The earth. You know, I believe the earth is way older than what we give it credit for. We think it's a young planet. I think it's actually
I
the
do
center
too.
of creation. I think we are the center of creation because we have free will. We're walking gods on two legs with the illusion of separateness. And we have to find the balance between that two.
That's a bold.
Yeah.
I think that's the walk.
That's a bold.
Yeah,
thing.
to me, it comes down to this idea. It's only one thing. It's separation or oneness. And it's like Paul Selleck, who's this top channeler, says, what you separate from the divine, it's all divine. What you separate from the divine and put into darkness, that same thing through co-resonance will drag you into the darkness with it. What you damn damns you back. What you bless blesses you in return. To say I am divine and that is not, is only the shadow pretending to be the light. So when you have people who are killing other people, they believe in the other. The same as we give this thing about all these evil people around the world. And I say, what could be more evil than dropping an atomic bomb, 2 atomic bombs in Japan, and melting 100,000 people into the sidewalk? When those people landed in the Philippines, they were given awards, they were cheered. And it's this belief in the other. This person is separate. I am divine and these people are not. And what you see is it changes. So in World War II, the Japanese were the bad guys and we had to kill them all. And then suddenly they start making cars and suddenly now they're the good guys. They're trading with us. And it changes. So the other always changes from one person to another. But it's this belief that I am divine and everybody else is not divine. Therefore, and I'm separate from them. Therefore, I can kill them. They're objects and they're not part of me. And I can do whatever I want to them. And it's about me getting ahead and the ego is running the show. And the key to the spiritual thing is to kill the ego and realize you are, like Drew pointed out, we are all cells in the body. We are all working together in the body. And when one cell decides that it's not going to do what every other cell does, I'm not going to continue to duplicate. Don't tell me what to do. I'm an ego. I can do whatever I want. Then it's suddenly called a cancer cell. And this is what we have to learn, that we are part of the same body and that cells all do exactly what they're supposed to do. And because we got free will, we have this ego thing. And that's what gets us into this idea of a separation. And we're separate from everybody else. And everybody thinks they're saving the world. So everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. Nobody believes I'm the bad guy. Everybody believes it's the other guy. The other is the bad guy. And we have to kill them. We have to exterminate them. We have to put them in cages. We got to do all this kind of stuff. And it all comes down to one thing, the belief in separateness. If you believe you're separate, all the evil will start. If you understand that you are all one cells in the same body, then you get there. And that's why the experience is so important, is to try to explain it to people is almost impossible because you're talking to somebody's ego and you're not going to convince anybody. It's the experience that most people change because of experience. You have the ayahuasca experience, you have a UFO experience or something like that. You have the experience and that's what changes people. They very rarely, it's like Max Planck says, you do not convince your opponent by that convincing him he's wrong. It happens one funeral at a time. You're never going to convince anybody. You can see that in American politics. You're never going to convince the other guy. Two people hear the same speech and they got exactly the opposite because they believe in the other. They believe I'm separate. I'm brought by God and you're from the devil. And when you believe in separation, that's that's where all evil comes from, in the mistaken belief in separation.
So I wanted to say there was a first of all, this is a way better this conversation. I thought this was going to be an awesome conversation. Drew, thank you for being here, man. This has been. I feel like we got to have a part 2 to this conversation.
I know.
So Lou Elizondo, yeah, that's right, Coley. I mentioned his name. He once said, I think he was talking to Kurt Jermangel on the Theory of Everything podcast. I think so. Maybe not. But he said, something. They were kind of summing up, like, well, what do you do with all? He said, love your family. Hug your, love them or spend time with them or something like that to that effect. And I thought, what kind of answer is that to like, what should we do? I think it was like something to that effect. That was like the question was, what do we do about all the? He's like, oh, I tell you what, man, love your family. And I thought to myself, that just sounds ridiculous. Like. It's nice. It's a great thought. It's very sweet. But, Grant, and we didn't even get to the orbs yet. And we have 12 minutes. We're not going to get to that today. But it's interesting.
Time is flown.
I know. But I do think that it is interesting that Grant, I'm not kidding. I feel like all honesty, I feel like this conversation was placed at this very specific time. I just recently discovered Donald Hoffman. The very first thing you mentioned in this conversation 2.5 hours ago was Donald Hoffman. The very first thing. I've been looking into a lot of this idea of reality and many other things too, but many of the things that I've been researching lately, I'm talking the last couple of weeks, you were talking about throughout this entire conversation today. I'm not saying this whole thing was for me, but it is no accident that you came on at this time. Not in my mind. So I think it was a really, really good conversation. I'm honored, and I really appreciate the time and the conversation. Drew, I appreciate you coming on and giving your input. It was essential to this conversation. With your knowledge of the medicines, I couldn't possibly speak to it like you did. So I appreciate that. Coley, thank you for even bringing Drew on. This has just been awesome all around. And again, I appreciate everything. Do you guys have, Grant, do you have anything that you want to tell everyone? What you're working on next, where they can find you, what they should look forward to in the future?
Well, basically, I'm doing this reality thing where I maintain that the government really doesn't know what people think they know, or that maybe one or two people who know, and they're ones to weaponize it. You even talk about Lou Elizondo, and he still talks about the footprints in the living room. They could be a threat, and that's how you sell it. So if if you go into Congress and you say, Congress, these are good guys and we just want to do a scientific investigation, they're going to tell you, get out of here. But if you can present it as a threat, then you're going to get research funding, because you're going to be the guys that are going to save us from the evil aliens. And as I told the story, we had the meeting with Lou Elizondo and Mellon, and we had is Canadian parliamentary people were going to come forward, 10 guys who were going to say they were interested in UFOs, and Mellon and Nolan and all these guys were going to sit on a panel, and they were going to answer questions to these guys. We were going to broadcast this. Anybody who wanted to YouTube it, we're going to let them YouTube it, and we're going to sort of blow this thing wide open. And as soon as they heard that the Canadian government just wanted to do a scientific investigation, that's when Mellon said, that's the poison pill, I'm gone. They kept telling us, oh, you got to get these military people and you got to have the committees and do them. We said, we got no military people. Canadians, they're not into military. And it was like this, they wanted to do the threat. And we said, no. The Canadians said, no, we're not doing the threat thing. We want to do a scientific investigation. And that's when Mellon said, that's a poison pill, I'm gone. Because you're not going to make any money. You're going to do the threat thing. So what I'm doing now is going to this idea about the bottom line of what's actually going on. Because that's my search is for myself, is to try to figure out 1975. What was that thing? What's life all about? And so when I hear Drew and this thing with the 5-methoxy, when I heard that I could get access to this, I said, that's the ultimate. I can skip the LSD, I can skip all this other stuff. I want to get the ultimate. I can't die until I've actually had that experience of this ultimate being one with source, or knowing what source is, to sort of confirm that yes, this is this world of source, and everything under it is just this sort of sparks of the divine, creating this world of duality and stuff like that. So to me, it's like a game, and I've thankful. The two things that were given to me during my psilocybin thing is I was taken through a compassion meditation a number of times, and I was taken through a gratitude meditation every time. So I didn't know what those were. Absolutely, I'm the most gratified person in the world that I actually got to play this game. What else could I possibly ask for? And I'm yet very compassionate of the suffering in the world. And I think I've had a life that I couldn't have asked for, and I'm very thankful for it. Although I do believe that in some way I chose this life, and I chose exactly what's happening. Nothing is really happening by accident.
I have to agree with you. Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And again, I thought very differently of you years ago, because I didn't know a lot about your perspective, and I think that you've changed. Your perspective has changed.
Oh, absolutely. I said if I hadn't had the UFO experience in 1975, I would be just as stupid as everybody else. The reason I changed is I had the experience in 1975. Then I saw Dr. Michael Newton lecture at Laughlin, Nevada. That just blew me away. And then I had the February 26th, I had the consciousness download. And then I had another download in 2017. And then I had the ayahuasca. I guarantee you, that's why I say experience is what changes people. You're never going to convince anybody by arguing with them. It's the experiences. And that's why pain is so important, and all these kind of things. That's the experience that changes people and moves them in the right direction.
That's true. True. You can't make change without becoming angry, and pain definitely you wouldn't know. I always say it's like a pendulum. You don't know happiness until you've known sadness. Otherwise, there'd be no gauge in between.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Experience is what it's all about. That's what changes people. And I think that a lot of high-level people will agree with that. That it's almost impossible to argue with people because you're arguing with their ego. And I won't get into the dual brain thing, but if you look at the research back in the 70s and 80s, the left brain interpreter guesses at everything and it's wrong every single time. And that's what you're dealing with. You're up against this left brain thing that thinks it knows everything. It knows more about UFOs than the generals. It knows more about everything than the generals. And it just talks and talks and talks and talks. And you're never going to convince it. It's only when you get hit in the head and you go through the front windshield of a car that suddenly it wakes you up. And that's what changes people is events and experiences and psychedelics and this. And we are moving there. We are moving. It doesn't appear very fast, but I think we are getting there. We are moving down the road of an awakening.
Yeah.
And when people are ready to go, they'll go. And you can't force people to go. We've volunteered to come in to help other people, lift other people up. But it's all a process, and we have forever. It's like we like, because we're in the West, we want everything yesterday. We have eternity. It doesn't matter. Even if we destroy the world, we're going to learn a lesson and we're going to go on because it goes on forever. The lessons just keep going. And people say, I'm going to get off the karmic wheel. And I say, are you kidding me? That's like hiding, dressing up like a woman on the Titanic and getting on the lifeboat and then waving at the people as they go down with the Titanic. I mean, why would you not come back and try to help? Your kids are in trouble. And or I say, how long can
I
you
don't
sit
know
on the
up
beach?
until that. I was, yeah.
Yeah, how long can
Well,
you sit
yeah.
on the beach of Miami or of Hawaii and drink Mai Tais? You say, the world's in trouble. Do you want to help? No, I'm drinking Mai Tai. Come back in a billion years.
I vowed to get through this lifetime and never come back, but
Oh,
now
no.
you say that, it's like, oh man, you're roping me right back in.
Oh man, that was hilarious.
We'll see you guys the next lifetime. Yeah.
That was the
Boy.
best
Boy, oh,
ending
boy.
ever.
I had hope, Grant.
I've never heard anything like that before. Oh man, only a couple times I've been brought to tears on this show, and that was one of them. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have Greg Cameron ending the show on a very positive note.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste, my friend. All right,
Yes, thank you so much, Grant. Thank
Yeah.
you
Thanks.
so
Let's
much,
do it again
Drew.
sometime.
Yeah.
please, yeah.
And
please.
Let's get together next May. Let's get the arrangements and maybe you
Okay.
can put it out
Yes.
and people that want to join us, we can maybe get some sort of thing that Drew can do a book and I'll help and we'll put out the message that way.
That would be
Perfect.
Absolutely.
awesome.
I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that, and I'd love to be a part of that. So yeah, we should all
Beautiful.
definitely keep in contact.
That's
Yes,
exciting.
this will be great. It is exciting. It is, and look, it just all came about. So I think this is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely, yes. I look forward
The
to it.
one thing I would recommend, anybody who wants to know how this all works, you got to watch The Ride. Have you ever seen The Ride? The comedian, what's his name? Bill Hicks.
Let me check
If
it
you
out.
haven't, read Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks, the video, The Ride. It's 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 10 seconds. It tells you exactly how the world works. It's unbelievable insight. Funny.
What's
Bill
it called
Hicks,
again?
The
One
Ride.
more time.
The
Bill
Ride.
Hicks.
Bill
Ride.
Hicks
Okay.
is the comedian, and it's called The Ride. He died very young, but he got this out before and it's exactly how the world works.
I'm
It's
gonna watch it.
about going on the roller coaster at the park.
Got it.
Fascinating. I
Not saying
can't
too
wait.
much. Yeah, my watch list on there. All right, guys, we got to end this because we are like just a few minutes out. So, Grant, we're gonna set that up. Coley is the scheduler. She's very excellent
Okay.
at that. So, Coley, Drew, we'll definitely have you on if you have the time when that time comes because to have somebody here that again, I'm not an expert on the medicine side, so that would be awesome to have you on too.
Yeah.
And with that, guys, we're gonna talk next time. All right.
Yeah, next time, and then we'll be promoting May. That'll be
Yeah.
good. So,
Namaste,
yep.
my friends. Namaste. All right, Grant.
Okay.
Peace. Bye.
Peace.
And
Yes.
Drew, catch you next time, my friend.
All right, brother.
Thank you,
All right.
Drew.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
man.
is exciting. This is big time exciting. So I'm so glad that you were available. I just
Yeah,
saw
that
you
was
and happened to
awesome.
see you in the chat, and I was like,
That was
let's
awesome.
get Drew on here. Yeah,
I
so
was like,
that's pretty
"Bet, let's
amazing.
do it. Let's do this, man. Bring him on." Because again, I know you're, again, if anybody's got firsthand experience with that whole aspect of things, it's you. So that was awesome, Coley,
And
for you to even
I-
catch that and bring him on because
Yeah, I
I know,
love Grant.
yeah,
I love
and-
Grant to death. He's we've been in contact ever since we first started talking. So he's a great dude, and anytime he's on, I'd love to get a chance to talk to him. So
Yeah, I knew that. So I was so glad to see you in the audience. So I'm glad you could hop right on. You didn't. You just got right. That's pretty amazing.
I
So
cannot believe I got a chance to talk to Grant Cameron. To be totally honest, that was like it's surreal.
he's a
It's little
great
surreal.
guy to talk
Yeah.
to. He really is.
That was really.
I
It was
stay in
honestly
contact
surreal.
with
Yeah.
him. I mean, he's got like fabulous ideas. He really does.
Yeah, and
Maybe you could.
he's very like he's very smart. He remembers things. He has he's quoting things in real time, like verbatim, which I have to like Google stuff to quote. So I'm like, how does that thing go again? And I can't find it. Let me just paraphrase. He's
and
quoting things
he's
in real
talking
time.
like 1.5 speed. All the time. He's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
he's like
yeah.
Yeah,
one
he
and a half
is
speed.
too. He is. He is. That's why I say you get so much information from him because he's rolling through it. But he's
You
been
can just
doing
tell
this
you
for
can tell
50
his mind is so
years.
much faster than his mouth.
Yeah, he is like thinking, and the thing is, it all comes. It's like almost like he just like oozes it out. It just comes to him. He's like on it, on it, on it, on it, on it, on it. When I do my whole pontifications, I can go for hours, but a lot of what I say is like throwing spaghetti on the wall. He like takes the spaghetti and puts it like he lines it up. And then-
It's all in a unique order. Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's got a
yeah.
whole it's
Yeah.
definitely enlightening to say the least. But yeah, we'll have to get then a little more planning, keep me on the back end of the deals, and then we'll come bring you guys back on.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he
for
said May.
May,
He
yeah.
said May. So
I'm
that's,
going. I
I'm-
am
yeah.
going.
I
Yeah,
can't go
for
anywhere.
sure.
I can't go anywhere. You know that. But
I'll
I
go
will
for
be
it.
there with spirit and all.
Well, maybe we could have some of it on the show
That would
or
be cool,
on
yeah.
the page at least if
We
some recordings
do a
available.
live CE5. How about that?
A live CE5.
Yes, I'm game. I'm there. I'll do it. And I've never experienced stuff like that before, so I would fall in that category and would be more than happy to fill out whatever forms or give you whatever data I have. I think it'd be awesome.
beans.
I'm all for this. This is
All
like
right.
perfect.
So John's theory was, using ayahuasca or psychedelics to help people process that situation, because he was under the same belief that I'm under, like this is all a consciousness thing. So trying
Yeah.
to couple that. So yeah, it was just
Yeah.
That's
I don't
perfect.
know.
Real quick, I gotta end things on the radio side at least because radio is we end like right now on the radio. We
Oh,
can come back if you guys want to. I don't. I honestly, actually, I can't. I have to get up. Really, it's midnight my time. I do have to get up early in the morning to go to work.
You're good.
So
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry,
And Drew, well, yeah, we'll all keep in contact and I'll open up a chat and stuff, and then we'll definitely
Yeah.
need Drew back on too. Yeah.
100%,
Awesome.
man. Drew, thank you for being here, man. I appreciate it. All right, guys.
I appreciate being here. It's fun. Talk to you guys later.
Talk to you later, man.
Talk to you soon.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week. Thank you for joining us on our show tonight. It has been freaking awesome. And with that, everyone, we will catch you next week. Stay tuned for the tunes at the end of the show. Peace, everybody.
Marquise and Coley, they're ready to go. Talking about aliens, UFOs, and the unknown. The talk show is buzzing, the excitement grows. Exploring the mysteries that the universe holds. Get ready to dive into the world of the paranormal. Welcome to the Coley and Marky Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild ride for sure. Fearless and bold, not afraid to ask questions that challenge all we think we grasp. Every episode brings a new task to uncover the truth beneath the mask. Believe in the unbelievable. Open your mind. Welcome to the Coley and Marky Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in and get ready for a wild ride for sure. Welcome to the Coley and Marky Show, where we uncover the secrets that nobody knows. From aliens to UFOs, we're ready to explore. Strap in